Okay, call to order 3:32. Roll call,
Vice Chair Ponte,
present.
Commissioner Cottrell,
Present.
Commissioner Tilka.
Here.
Commissioner McLaughlin will not be with us today, but she says she will be here on the 20th.
Okay, next up is public comment. And not seeing anyone stepping up for public comment, we'll move on to approval of minutes.
I don't have, Mr. Telka, do you have anything you want to mention on it?
No, I don't.
in the microphone, I can't hear you. I think there's rain.
No, I don't, actually. But
I motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Cottrell,
Approve.
Commissioner Tilka,
Approve?
Vice Chair Ponte.
Yes.
The motion carried 3-0.
Okay. Next up is HR report.
So there is one thing missing from there that I did forget to put on there. Well, it's kind of happened in between the time I did this and now. We had one of our lieutenants in our firefighter department, or our fire department, move over to St. Pete Beach, and he's now going to be the fire chief over there. We're sad to see him go, but it's definitely a great opportunity. And we have promoted Lieutenant Schleppy. So he's now going to be our new lieutenant. So that's the only change from the report there.
Congrats.
I would like to ask to move, where's it at?
Let me see where we're at here.
This one here. Can I ask something at this point?
Sure.
Okay. Because of the lieutenant leaving, it had to do with disparities in pay. So there's an inequity based upon what other communities are offering. I know that there was this through the Board of Commissioners, there was a decent, which is fair. It was a fair pay raise voted on. I don't know if it's approved yet or if they have to vote it again, but there's a decision moving forward to move ahead of their contract time with the pay raise and then give them a pay raise when it's contract time as well.
Yes, it has already been done.
I talked with Mr. Gomez in the past. We had a meeting. It was the mayor, myself, and there were a few other people in that meeting about doing the classification and salary review.
Yes.
I know that Mr. Gomez had mentioned he planned on to do it in this upcoming fiscal year. I think that's correct. If I'm wrong, please let me know, Mr. Gomez. But I would like to move that forward on the agenda after I think we're going to do the oath of office. She's not here, but we have to do the chair. Those have to happen, the chair and vice chair. But I'd like to move that forward, to ask that get moved forward, because by the time we finish the personnel budget, it would be nice to have something in motion on that so we could work on it. Because without it, we're just going to wait and delay. Then it's going to take time to get the approval for paying for that review. So if we could talk about that, the three of us, would we move forward?
New business, you're saying, before
on-
going on to the draft?
Before we go on to that draft, because that needs
Fine
to
with me.
happen.
Paul, okay with you? Okay.
Okay, all right?
Okay.
I'm sorry, thank you.
No, you're fine.
All right.
New business. So we can't do the oath, correct?
I'm moving that to the 20th.
Okay. So next up is appointment of chair.
I'd like to nominate myself for chair.
I second.
Thank you.
Anybody second?
I second.
Okay.
I'll second that, or whatever.
Yeah,
Third.
Paul.
I'll third.
Vice Chair Ponte,
Yes, agree.
Commissioner Tilka,
Yes.
Commissioner Cantrell.
Yes,
The motion carried 3-0, and Commissioner Cottrell is our new chair.
thank you.
You're fabulous. Thank
All
you.
right. All right, I like the debate. I'm looking forward to it.
So I'd like to nominate Christine as vice chair.
I second.
Honestly, I
Take it. Yeah, it's not that big.
I second Paul. I'm happy to do it. My commitments with work has made it difficult to commit a lot of time to this committee in recent past, and So with that limitation, I'm happy to do it. If Jean or not Jean, Judith Ann or Paul are interested, I'd be happy to have them lead. So
I think you've done an excellent job.
I haven't been able to, spend much time on this, so
It's okay.
You accept the nomination?
I accept the nomination.
Okay.
We
second, yep.
Okay. Okay. Commissioner Tilka,
Yes.
Commissioner Cantrell,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ponte.
Yes.
The motion carried 3-0, and Christina Ponte will serve as the vice chair for this year.
Thanks.
You're next, Paul.
I'd have to resign.
So I think you
So
lead
with this,
now.
how does this work at this point? This is,
I'd enjoy you
You're a
leading.
chair.
okay,
If that's,
so we'll go ahead.
I don't know what the.
So how do you guys want to proceed with this? Where we last left off, and I think what we're doing is moving on to this point to the draft, or setting the meeting schedule for 2024, correct? Based upon the current rules, we have to set at least a quarterly meeting. I honestly believe we're probably going to have them more frequent than quarterly, but I think we should set at least the quarterly and then add the times in. Because if we don't start investing some time in, more than an hour each time we meet, we're not going to get through this. So we did talk about on the 20th, we would come and spend extra time, and I'm pretty sure the county said they'd buy us steak dinners or something like that, or the city, I don't remember what that was, but I'm probably making up a story here.
No, we had agreed that, you all had decided that you would like to start at 3:30 on the 20th of November and just work until you finish the personnel policy.
Personnel policy.
And then we will provide dinner to you.
Yep.
Well, inside here, we were thinking of,
So is that one of the first things we need to say, the 20th is one of the meetings, right? And then I guess what we have to do is come up with times, and I realize times may shift. So when we get up close to meetings, if we're within that meeting before, so like the month or 2 months before, if that needs to be changed, do they email you and you notify everybody, or how does that go about?
if it needs to be changed, to let us know, and we'll work with everybody and find out what days and times they can meet, and then we'll pick a day that everybody can agree on.
The reason I'm asking this is because I don't think they can email me directly. They have to communicate through
Correct.
you. Is
They
that
would have to
correct?
send it to me as their
Through you,
secretary.
okay.
Correct.
And then I would work with Mr. Gomez at this point to choose what that date would be, correct?
Yeah.
Is that right, Mr. Gomez?
My suggestion is you set your dates
Yes.
today.
Absolutely.
They can be whatever dates you want them to be.
Okay. You guys ready? So we've got a November. Now, this is up to you, because I can tell you that in December, it's going to be difficult for me until the end of December. November 29th, I'm going in for a major surgery. So I know I can't even drive for 3 weeks. So so we have November the 20th. If we go, so the 29th, 1, 2, 3, the 20th of December is the earliest I'm even going to be able to drive. And that's real close to Christmas. So what would you guys like to do?
Could we do the latter half of the Christmas week?
29th, I'll be out of town. I could do the 28th
And I won't be here that week. I'm going to try to take off for the first time that week,
that week.
Christmas week.
Should we go to the first week of January?
I think so.
I can meet 2nd through the 5th, any date.
The city will be closed the 1st and the 2nd.
The 1st and 2nd, okay. We can meet 3rd, 4th, or 5th then.
Perfect.
Dr. Tilka?
I'm pretty much open.
Okay, I'm not certain what the Board of Commissioners meetings are, and I don't want to interfere or get in their way. They're usually on Wednesdays, is that correct? Do they have, I don't have anything on my
They're not
calendar.
meeting until the 11th, and they have their regular meeting at 2, and they have their workshop meeting at 4.
On the
We'll
11th,
be just
okay.
coming back from holiday on the 4th, and then I know we have to do the packet for the 11th.
Okay, on the 3rd, what works best for you, Christine? Because 3:30 seems like it interferes with work.
Honestly, my work day's 8 to 5, so, and my predictability on my schedule, if I have to travel, is not often till a couple weeks beforehand. So the 3:30 is probably my best bet. Going in the middle of the day is difficult, so the
Okay.
3:30 time is probably
Would
best.
4 be better?
That would work well. I don't know
Or-
if it's starting.
Dr.
with
Tilka, are
field
you okay
job.
with 4 in the afternoon?
Fine.
That would work
So
well.
can we do 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the 3rd of January? Four o'clock in the afternoon on the 3rd of January. And then 3 months after that's March, is that correct? So we're only looking at the regular, what we would normally schedule meetings, right? Right now?
March?
March.
What time do we meet on the 20th?
On the 20th of, 20th? is-
November.
Of November is 3:30 PM.
3:30.
3:30 PM. And we'll probably work till at least 6 or 6:30 would be my guess. It may be even 7. Um, 8th, 10th, 20th, I know what I'm looking at now, okay. So March,
Is it, do we want to just try to stick to the first week and
want to try to do that?
get, consistent throughout the months?
How about the 6th of March, I'm sorry, 6th of March?
You the 7th?
The 7th, that's a Thursday. Are you guys okay with 4 PM on the 7th?
Seems okay with me.
Okay, March 7, 4 PM. So January 3rd, 4 PM, March 7th, 4 PM, correct? June. June, I would rather meet early in the month because I can guarantee you I'm leaving the country. All right? I'm going to go on vacation. So, June 5th, if we stick to it. June 5th, Mr. Eschenfelder, is June 5th okay with you?
Yes, sir.
Is that okay with everyone else?
Yep.
Can we do 4 PM again?
Perfect.
September. In September, school starts. I don't know what day yet. Labor Day is the 2nd. So teachers are probably working, but not students in yet, the first week of September. So is the 4th of September okay with everybody? Mr. Eschenfelder,
Yes, sir.
4 PM?
Yes, sir?
If you need those, I'm open to even meeting later if it's necessary to help your schedule. Dr. Tilka, could you do that even?
Yep.
So,
I-
yeah, is that
They have-
harder on you guys?
Have regular work hours.
Make it work.
Yeah,
Is that not
I'd
normal
rather
time?
not
What
have-
time do you guys leave?
Our typical hours are 8 to 4:30, but like I said, we're flexible. We can make it work as long as we know ahead of time.
So 4 PM would actually be easier for you, even earlier probably, okay.
That's fine, whatever you
Well,
guys
it's-
are.
Well, you guys are part of it. We don't want
that's
we don't want
why
to
I-
overlook that.
we have to kind of get the sweet spot between the two.
Well,
I don't want
and-
them staying later.
And for me, sometimes I have Reddington Beach and sometimes I have Reddington Shores, which are 6 and 6:30 on Wednesday night. So if you go past 4, could may make it difficult for me.
Okay. So if we move forward another 3 months, that actually takes us back to December 6th, which is a Wednesday, first Wednesday. Are you guys okay? Mr. Eschenfelder, are you okay for December 6th? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at November. It's December 4th.
Yes, December 4th is fine.
December
At
4th,
4 o'clock?
4 PM again?
Okay.
So that gives us a 3-month meeting, which is really 5 meetings next year. But it gives us a 3-month meeting set for the entire year. Is that okay?
That works well for me.
Yep.
Is that,
Do we need to vote on that, or do we just say it's okay?
Your calendar, and I'll send Judith Ann these dates and times.
Okay, all right. Okay, and then, so we've got that done. Are you guys okay to move forward, or do you want to vote? You tell me what you want to do, because I'm okay just moving forward.
I'm fine going forward.
Okay,
Move forward.
okay, moving forward, okay. The next thing which I wanted to bring up is actually talking about the compensation plan, actually doing the review. So basically, I want to get the right word, guys, and it's not coming to my head all of a sudden. It is the classification, the classifications and the pay scales. Now, I know there was a company that was used in the past. I don't know if that has to go out to RFP or what has to happen, but I would really like to move on us deciding that, yes, we should move forward with this, so we get some of that taken care of ahead of time. So when we get to the point we can actually look at it, hopefully there's something there and we can move on it rather than having to wait 3 months to get through it.
Yeah, so what I'll go ahead and do, I'll work with Rob on the RFP. He's usually our guy to work on that anyway, so that works out there. We will put it out to people and Demand Star, but what I would like to do first is get some quotes to see if it meets the threshold. Our threshold is 30,000. I'm pretty sure it's going to be more than that, but just to do due diligence. If it's under 30, then I'll get 3 quotes, and then we'll pick the best one from there. But if not, we'll go through the whole RFP process.
Okay, one of the things for the 3 of us, one of the things that I noticed on the last one that was done, I think in 2019, it was not a full review. I don't know when the last time that was done. This was basically a light, for
Correct.
lack of a better word. It didn't say light on it, but it did have a note in it that this is not a full review that could be done. Because I don't think we need to do a full review every time we turn around. I don't think it needs to be done even every 3 years. But it's clear that our pay scales might have some room that need to be moved. And somehow, I know that Mr. Gomez is going to need to make plans on how to fix these as it happens. Because I don't think everybody's pay can be fixed in year 1. It
Right.
just can't. It's unreasonable. But what can we do? And I'd like to make sure that if we're doing this, we look for the full suite. We need to look at the classifications. How are they classified to other area positions, not our sister cities on the beach?
Sure.
But Seminole likes to take our employees, Dunedin likes to take our employees. So we need to make sure that we're doing something that's comprehensive.
Sure.
And get it done, and then we can do adjustments going further in the future. Are you guys okay with asking for that? It needs to be a comprehensive classification pay scale review. Do we vote on that? I want to vote on
Yeah,
that.
is there any opposition from the city manager or the city? Is that?
Just so you're aware, we do have to issue an RFP in order to do that. So that will take usually takes at least a month to do that. So by the time we get responses back, my guess is it'll be probably we'll run it into January due to the holidays, when responses will be back from firms that would like to perform a study. Because I'm going to infer that it's going to cost more than $30,000, and we do have to bid it out or issue RFPs to have the work completed.
I think we're all making an assumption that you're correct on that, too.
Okay. Just advising, I wasn't sure if you were aware that we have to do that.
Are you in favor of doing a?
Oh, yeah,
study?
yeah, absolutely. We haven't had one, I think, since
18, I think.
2018 or 2019, just to do a job classification, job pay, et cetera.
I think
So
it was more compensation than anything.
it was just, rather than the actual job classifications, are they properly where they need to be? Are they properly classified as either exempt or non-exempt, as we've discussed? So they will take a look at all of that. So job classifications, exempt versus non-exempt, compensation, how do we compare with our comparable cities, et cetera, et cetera. And just so you're aware, our turnover rate or losing employees, we have lost very few due to compensation.
Okay.
We have had more in our sanitation, for example, employees that just did not like the work, did not want to do the work. We've increased the salary to $18 an hour for sanitation, $19 an hour if they have a CDL, which is comparable to other cities such as St. Petersburg and Treasure Island and St. Pete Beach. In our fire department, the discussions that were brought up here just a few minutes ago, the chief approached me about there are 18 fire districts in the county. And not every city obviously oversees a fire department. There are independent or taxing authority fire districts like Palm Harbor, Eastlake. There are no cities of Palm Harbor, Eastlake. They're their own entity over the fire district. And so some of these fire districts have approached some of our staff, hey, come work with us. And yes, the pay is higher. We have adjusted their pay. There was a 15% increase for all fire staff with the exception of the fire inspector, which makes us a lot more comparable to all of the other fire districts. difficult to compete with the Clearwater, St. Petersburg, Largo, Pinellas Park, your much larger fire districts, but we have not had a fire personnel say, hey, I'm leaving because I just don't like it here, I've been treated poorly. That has not occurred. It is the person referenced, our lieutenant, became a district fire chief in the city of St. Petersburg. It's a promotion. He's an older fire staff member, lieutenant, and so he's looking for that next promotion, and it was available, and he was the most qualified and was selected. So it wasn't because he was unhappy here. It was a promotional opportunity. It obviously comes with more pay because a district chief is higher than a lieutenant. But we have, again, adjusted our salaries. It was the only department that had not received any adjustments in the time that I've been here. And again, primarily because they are under a collective bargaining agreement. That agreement expires at the end of this current fiscal year, October 31st of 2024. So we're in the third and the final year. We will begin negotiating the next 3-year agreement probably in as early as the late winter, early spring, with the IAFF that oversees our fire department. And that'll create a new compensation step plan and pay plan for all of the members of the bargaining unit, and we will bring that back to you and ultimately to the Board of Commissioners for their review. The union would have to approve it. But just so you're aware, these increases have been fairly steady and they've been fairly consistent, and recently cities, Seminole, St. Petersburg, Clearwater, made some significant investments in fire salaries similar to what we just did, and definitely appreciate the Board of Commission listening to the fire chief and myself to allow that to happen going forward, that we're now comparable with other jurisdictions. Difficult to compete or compare, one, because again, we are 2 square miles. Our fire service district is about 3.5 square miles because we do go into the Reddingtons, but we're limited in the promotional opportunities. We have driver, operator, firefighter, paramedic, lieutenant, inspector, and then chief. There is no deputy chief or assistant chief. There are no district chiefs, no captains. We're fairly small. So if you want to progress and you want to move after 8 or 9 years to be a lieutenant right away, and then 2 years later to be a captain, it's difficult to do it in a smaller department. We do offer, as you're aware, a variety of opportunities for fire. There's a lot of opportunity for water type work. We have equipment comparable to other jurisdictions, from the ladder truck to the high water vehicle. So they're very creative in their training and what we do. So there is plenty of diversity of work. There's no shortage of it. Obviously, our call volume is not what it is out of other fire stations, firehouses, but our staff do the very, very best that they can, and they're very motivated and they're excited to be here. And also the addition of benefits, the commission did approve for the budget for the current year to pay for 50% of anyone with a dependent or family medical coverage. So that is just an additional benefit that I'm sure I've been told several are very, very thankful for that. So we're doing everything we can, but we will issue an RFP hopefully I'm going to shoot for before Thanksgiving, but can't guarantee that. Probably it'll go out the week after Thanksgiving, and a minimum of 3 weeks to advertise that. And then hopefully we will it'll be more than a month probably, or at least 4 weeks before the due date of those, and then we will bring those back to you in January.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. By the way, we do have the best employees. Yeah. All right. So, are we ready to move on to the personnel policy?
Sure.
I-9? Yes. Okay, so we're on page I-7 of the packet you just gave us? Is that correct?
All your updates so far with the little dates on when you made the changes, and so you are at IC, joint employment.
Employment. I need to
Thank you.
find out where it is on my notes real quick.
Page I-7.
Got it. I'm looking at my electronic copy because that's where all my notes are at.
Is,
So joint employment, are you guys okay? Do you want me to continue reading like we did in the past?
Happy to have you read if you'd like to.
I'm all right with it. So, here we go. C, the intent of this policy is to allow employees to be employed in more than one, position and possibly more than one pay rate at the same time within the city payroll structure. The following criteria must be met for the eligibility. Only temporary OPS, part-time positions, which are considered to be occasional or sporadic in accordance with 29 CFR Section 553.30 will be eligible. I'm assuming that's just a federal law. Is that correct, Mr. Eschenfelder?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So then, 2, the employee's decision to work in a different capacity must be made freely and without coercion, implicit or explicitly by the employer. And 3, the joint position must be in a different capacity, i.e., it must not fall within the same general occupational category as the employee's primary government employment. When they say category, do we need a word in there or classification or anything like that, or is category supposed to be inclusive of the classification?
All of this wording is directly out of the Code of Federal Regulation.
So
And just so you all understand,
Okay.
that the idea is that if you're doing two separate jobs for the employer and the employer won't have to pay overtime, it has to be truly completely separate jobs. So if you're a firefighter, but then you also want to take on part-time work in the Parks Department, then that's joint employment. And if you work 60 hours in the week, the employer doesn't have to pay you overtime, but the federal government requires that they truly be separate jobs, because if they're close together, the argument is that the employer is just falsely dividing up job titles so as to avoid overtime, if that makes sense.
Okay. All right. And then the final sentence, administrative procedures for implementation and tracking this program we publish separately. I would like to stick to the thing where we as commissioners, civil service commissioners, are able to review the document before it's put into effect. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
Can we add some wording in there that reflects the way we've stated that in other cases, Mr. Eschenfelder?
Well, I wouldn't put it here. I think maybe we go back to the very beginning and put a provision that says that before implementing any administrative procedures, that the manager will have presented those to the Civil Service Commission first for its review and comment.
Okay.
I just don't want to put it here because there are other places in the code that also talk about administrative procedures.
Okay. Adding to the beginning, right?
beginning.
All right.
And it's something that we may even want to put, not in the policy, but put in the code amendments that we'll do, and that way it's in the ordinance.
Understood. When you talk about that, like the 2023-06 or something like that, the one where's our rules, is that what you're talking about?
Correct. Exactly.
All right. Okay, you guys, any other questions? Guys, if you want to ask questions, please interrupt me because I'll just keep going, okay? So D, employment of relatives, all right? Nepotism. 1, employment shall be in compliance with Florida Statute 112.3135 regarding restriction on employment of relatives. Pursuant to this section, a public official may not appoint, employ, promote, or advance, or advocate for appointment, employment, promotion, or advancement in or to a position in which an official is serving or over which the official exercises jurisdiction or control any relative of the public official. And An individual may not be appointed, employed, promoted, or advanced in or to a position if such appointment, employment, promotion, or advancement has been advocated by a public official serving in or exercising jurisdiction over control of the city department or office, who is a relative of the individual, or if such appointment, employment, promotion, or advancement is made by a city board of which a relative of the individual is a member. That's a mouthful. 2, relative, for purpose of this section only, shall include father, mother, son, daughter, brother, sister, uncle, aunt, first cousin, nephew, niece, husband, wife, father-in-law, mother-in-law, son-in-law, daughter-in-law, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, stepfather, stepmother, stepson, stepdaughter, stepbrother, stepsister, half-brother, or half-sister, but shall not include any other relatives who become related by law or marriage not specifically listed above. 3, for purposes of this section only, public official, herein referred to as official, shall include but not limited to the commissioners, the city manager, the assistant city manager, city clerk, department directors, assistant directors, managers, supervisory employees, and any other city employee authorized to make employment-related recommendations or decisions, whether the official is elected, contracted, appointed, or hired. I would actually like to see the city attorney and the city treasurer added into this.
And probably acting city manager.
And acting city
What
manager?
it is, yeah, because if something happens with him, like if he's in the hospital for a while, that he would have to appoint a acting city manager that'll be approved by the board.
Okay.
So that's what that is, the city manager, acting city manager, and city clerk, and whoever you had said.
Did you get that, Mr. Ashenfelder? Are you guys okay with
it? You want city attorney and who else added?
city treasurer and acting city manager added in?
And then also deputy clerk. 'Cause
And
the
deputy
char-
clerk is
Yeah,
there.
the city charter provides for a deputy clerk and the acting city manager.
Okay, the deputy clerk is already included in that phrase. But what's missing
Yeah.
is the city attorney, the city treasurer, and the acting city manager.
So I put attorney and treasurer, I got that. I would recommend not putting acting because really, if you go getting into that, there are so many references throughout this policy to manager, director, whatever. And if you're going to do a construct of saying and acting all the time, you're going to make the document 1/4 longer. I mean, it's just understood. If someone is acting in a position, then they are obligated to abide by the strictures of that position. So I don't see it as legally necessary. To me, it's just extra word usage.
And it is covered, and any other city employee authorized to make recommendations.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I
And I
think
don't
it's
see the
doubly
benefit.
covered.
Okay,
Yes.
so
Okay.
those two, city attorney and city treasurer should be added, correct?
I got it.
Okay. Are you guys okay with that?
I am.
Okay, we're on 4 now, is that correct?
Yep.
It is the city's policy to prohibit an official from having direct supervision over any employee who is a relative of the official, as more fully set forth in paragraph 1. It is also the city's policy to prohibit an official from having direct supervision over any employee to whom the official is engaged or is otherwise involved in a current romantic relationship. 5, direct supervision shall include any situation in which the official would be in a position to make decisions concerning the terms and conditions of the person's employment with the city, including decisions about hiring, promotion, transfer, reclassification, compensation, benefits, work assignments, performance evaluations, training courses and programs, layoffs, return from layoff, termination, and all other tangible aspects of employment. Any concerns?
Good.
Okay. E, reemployment and disqualification, all right? 1, an employee who has been terminated from city employment for violation of any conduct or performance rules set forth in this policy, or who resigns after being notified of the city's intent to conduct a pre-termination meeting, but prior to a final disciplinary decision, is ineligible for reemployment for 3 years from the date of such resignation of termination. I want to look at that real quick. Based on our current discussions, Mr. Ashenfelder, the joint meeting between the Board of Commissioners and Civil Service Commission, is that still correct? An employee who has been terminated?
I don't think you're at your joint meeting. You talked about reemployment sit-out periods.
But I don't know what the officer's name, you said it was an employment officer or something like that, that would, would hold the hearing if there was an appeal for termination?
Has nothing, but this has nothing to do with that.
That's
This is
not,
simply
okay.
saying, number one is simply saying, if we tell you that we intend to conduct a pre-termination meeting, that this is before you guys get involved, before the hearing officer gets involved, under the due process for a civil service protected employee, the federal courts say that the first step you should do, and this is covered in the discipline section that we'll get to eventually, is you have a pre-termination meeting. And at that pre-termination meeting, the department head sits you down and says, well, employee, I am considering terminating your employment. Here's why. And, lay out what the evidence is and so forth. Do you have anything to say to me that would cause me to change my mind at this early stage? The employee says whatever they want to say to the director. And the director, if they're doing the right thing, will say, all right, well, I'll look into those defenses that you have, those witnesses that you have. I'll give you an opportunity to give me documents, because the idea is we don't want to make a wrong decision. And so the first step is the director sits with the employee. Only after that pre-term process, if the director then moves forward with termination, does the post-termination stuff occur, which is the opportunity to go to the hearing officer with you guys reviewing. So this is before any of that. This is just, I want to make sure as management, before I fire you, that I've let you know what I got against you, and I've let you tell me whatever it is you want to tell me why I shouldn't fire you.
Okay, all right.
Makes sense.
With that explanation, I get it. Thank you. Everybody okay? 2, an employee terminated due to a positive drug alcohol test or refusal to test or other violations of the drug-free workplace policy, or who voluntarily resigns within 2 weeks of a positive result in a test for drug use, or when an employee serves notice of resignation immediately upon notification of being selected for such test, is ineligible for reemployment for a period of 3 years after such resignation. Additionally, a former employee who owes the city money for drug testing or treatment, which was the responsibility of an employee to pay, shall be ineligible for reemployment until all funds owed are paid. Questions?
Done.
Okay. 3, an employee who voluntarily resigns without giving the required 2-week notice, see Section 9A4, or who is separated from employment for absence without leave, see Section 8, is ineligible for reemployment for a period of 1 year. If circumstances where the hiring department director certifies to the human resource staff's satisfaction that a non-eligible former employee will meet a critical need for the city, this human resources staff has authority to waive this waiting period. Sorry, my computer shut down. I need to look real quick. I'm good with that. The city. Okay. All right, 4. Employees who separate from city service due to failure to complete probation period where no discipline violation occurred, layoff, or end of a temporary position, or whose employment is terminated because of work is no longer available, are eligible for reemployment with no waiting period. 5. Notwithstanding the foregoing provisions, an employee may become ineligible for a longer period or permanently ineligible for reemployment as a result of independent action such as the settlement of a legal claim or an arbitration decision. Additionally, the city manager shall have the authority in exceptional circumstances and where the best interests of the city will be served to waive or reduce the periods of ineligibility stated in paragraphs 1 and 2 above.
Is there any documentation or process that needs to be associated with waiving that period?
That's what I'm curious about. I realize that there's going to be points where the city needs to hire employees because there's employment, there's difficulties getting good employees. But if we terminated an employee, why would we move forward ahead of the 3-year plan if that's the case to bring them back on? In my history in employment is that if I have terminated an employee it's never a good idea to bring them back. I don't know why we would do that. And there may be reasons, Mr. Gomez. Can you help us out with that? Did you catch what we were talking about? Okay.
Yeah, I think the only reason you bring, if you fail to follow a law in the process and you're ordered to hire an employee back, so such as a wrongful termination, other than that, I don't see why you would hire somebody back.
Are we allowed to move number 5, or is that some type of law that we have to be aware of? I don't know what you guys would want.
I mean, for me, I'm okay with it, and I mean, I could, if there's an exceptional circumstance, I mean, there's any number of things that could happen. I could understand wanting to reduce a period. I'm not sure, I can't come up with an example, but I would just want that documented in some sense.
What it
Like
is
to
that-
say why you're reducing the period.
So in other words, the city manager would have to document why.
There'd have to be a rationale. But I'm okay
Well,
with doing it.
As to that issue, I wrote down an additional sentence at the end of 5, which says, waiver justifications shall be documented in writing by the manager.
Excellent.
Can they be maintained by the Human Resources Department? Because it's not just documenting it. Where's that document going to go? Because if they're saying we're bringing them back for this issue, but yet that issue comes back up again and it's a problem, why are we
Retained in
hiring the person?
personnel and he's
So then
saying,
add even more language that says, and placed in the employee's personnel file.
Perfect.
Excellent.
That's excellent. Perfect. All right.
And in terms of why you would do it, I mean, I hear, Mr. Chair, your general concern, but especially with a small employer and with challenges to the workforce, you know, there just may be instances where the manager, to accomplish the mission, needs to hold his nose and bring somebody back, you know, shorten the period or whatnot. Another example that has occurred in my career that I've observed is that the employee was separated, you know, for the disciplinary issue or whatnot, but then subsequent evidence comes to light that they weren't guilty or they weren't as guilty. And so then if you just give a black and white reading, they're still ineligible because that's why they were terminated. But obviously it makes sense to lift that because new evidence has come to light. So there's reasons that it could be used.
That makes sense. Then it would be documented with that new evidence. That would be great. Okay. Everybody okay?
I'm good with that.
All right. 6, note, the disqualification periods contained herein are distinct from the ability of a department to recommend or not recommend any employee for rehire. Such recommendations are simply the opinion of the former employee's management. Though such recommendations may be taken into account, should a former employee apply for reemployment, they do not create a bar against such employment from being considered for rehire so long as the applicant is not under a disqualification period and is otherwise qualified to perform the job duties. Everybody okay? Concerns, questions?
I'm not sure I fully understand.
So we want to let people still apply, even if a sit-out period would say that they aren't eligible. And part of that gets to that the manager always has the right to waive. And then the other component of that is that we want directors to be able to say, you know, I'd really like to hire this person back, but then to make clear that that's not dispositive on the manager's ultimate decision of whether to waive the period or not. Does that explanation explain it?
It does. I might ask if we can just look at the wording there for, I don't know if it was unclear to anybody else, but it might read more easily with a little tweaking. But I understand the purpose, so I'm happy with that.
Section 5.
I made a note to make it more clear for the vice chair.
Thank you. Paul
Sure.
is on section I-9,
It's
19,
IE6.
IE6,
yep.
I-9.
Right, E6, so it's clarifying it, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, are we okay to move?
I understand it now, yeah. But I do think the manager should have authority. I mean, just thinking about employees and sometimes it might be better to take someone back than not, you know.
Yep. Are we okay to move on to 2? Okay. 2, personnel files. A, file location and content. 1, the city's official records of present and past employees and personnel files are maintained by the Human Resources Department. The Human Resources staff is the custodian of these records and may delegate maintenance and control responsibilities to staff members. 2, the Human Resources Department shall develop, revise, and authorize all forms related to personnel matters. Therefore, absent specific authorization from the Human Resources staff to the contrary, departments may not promulgate or make use of any customized or unauthorized personnel forms, including leave requests, time records, or employee evaluations. Department directors may, however, compile informational files on their, I missed my spot here, guys, on their employees. These files may duplicate information in the official personnel files. The department director is the custodian of personnel files maintained in his or her area of responsibility. So by no means is that saying that the official personnel file is not in control of the Human Resources Department. Is that correct? They're saying that the department director can actually have notes that they keep separate, but it is not official until it's in Human Resources hands. Is that correct?
I'm reading this as an example of what we have with recreation. Because they have childcare, they have to keep personnel records on their after-school care people and their summer camp people, making sure they have all their certifications, CPR, all that jazz. So it's not going to have things like medical or other personal information like that, but anything that the childcare licensing board needs to see.
Childcare licensing, so it's going to be their certifications and that sort,
Correct.
but the evaluations would not be in that,
No.
correct? Things like their time and attendance, that wouldn't be there either?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay.
What this gets to is that we want there to be an official personnel file that is overseen and controlled by Human Resources as to making sure, number one, that the documents that are required to be in it are in it, but also making sure that other stuff that doesn't need to be in it or shouldn't need to be in it isn't in it, but also to allow the individual department heads who are doing the annual evaluations to keep their own desk file, for lack of a better, term, because anybody who's managed people before, know that as the year goes on, you make yourself notes, you get a customer attaboy, email, hey, I really want to praise this person for picking up my, garbage really well, or whatever the issue is. I want to praise this firefighter for his or her response. And so the boss keeps those things. And then whenever it comes time for annual evaluation, the boss pulls all those out, and that helps the boss develop that annual evaluation. So that's kind of what it's there. But I put it in the personnel policy because, number one, I want to make sure that the directors know it's okay to keep that separate file. But number two, if you do, you need to understand that the clerk is not responsible for it, HR is not responsible for it, you're responsible for it, and it is still a public record because you're compiling it. And, when I do management training, I will tell the directors and the managers, don't put in anything in a departmental file that you aren't going to want the newspaper to read, So even if you're keeping it yourself, make sure that whatever comments you put in there are professional and so forth. Avoid talking about their medical conditions. But in any event, that's the policy purpose of that language.
Any concerns, guys? Everybody okay?
I would think it could become a little bit more clear in the last 3 sentences to reflect. I think the first 2 sentences are very clear, but obviously with the discussion, I think it could just be made more clear. Department directors may compile informational files and explain some of what we just discussed. these are unofficial but still public documents, something like that. I think it could become more clear, but it's the purpose and discussion made that clear enough for me.
Okay, I made a note.
Are you okay, Mr. Ashenfelder?
So I made a note that I will attempt to make that more clear in subsection 2.
Okay, is it okay to move forward, or do you need another second?
No, I'm not going to try to wordsmith it now. I made a note to try to make it more clear.
Okay.
I will bring that back later, so.
Okay, all right, thank you, sir. I'm going to move forward to 3, guys. Public records requests for personnel files made to the city, must be transferred to the Human Resources Department for response. The Human Resources staff or designee shall be responsible for reviewing files to ascertain any information which has been designated as confidential or exempt from public record disclosure, and in conjunction with the city attorney's office, asserting applicable public record exemptions for such records. Note, employees holding certain positions are entitled under Florida law to request that certain personally identifying information, such as home address, not be released by governmental agencies which may be in possession of this information. It is the responsibility of each employee holding such a position to make these requests to other governmental agencies.
Good with that?
I'm good?
Yep.
You good? 4. Excuse me. 4, the official personnel record, which is maintained by Human Resources Department, shall contain at least the following documents regarding the employee. A, the employee's initial and any subsequent employment transfer promotion applications, I-9 form, interview forms, oath of employment contract if applicable, acknowledgement of receipt of benefits to include secondary employment approval forms, conditional offer forms, retirement enrollment forms when applicable, approved hire action forms authorizing employment, and other related documents required by law or the city policy to be included. B, the employee's performance evaluation forms and written responses thereto. C, all official personnel actions such as promotions, transfers, and pay increases. D, official disciplinary policy and warning or counseling forms issued to the employee. E, signature forms demonstrating employees' receipt of city policies. F, records demonstrating attendance at city training sessions. G, any separation surveys provided by the department employee. I got 2 things here that I just want to mention. Signature forms demonstrating an employee's receipt of city policies. You guys are actually going to have that electronic, right?
Yes, we're working on that.
So that, when that becomes electronic, is there like, how would that apply here? Because I don't
Click
think
here
there's going to be
for-
an actual signature, right?
Now, there's 2 ways. I have to talk with Paycom how they're going to do it, but I believe that there is a kind of cursor signature thing, if you will, or there's a click here box to acknowledge you're accepting these terms.
Mr. Ashenfelder, do we need to document that these could be electronic in format? Do we need to do that?
Most of these documents and actions, some of these are already electronic, almost all of them will be electronic.
Should we include that in there so there's no issue if it comes back and it's
Most of
not
our
on
city
paper?
records are electronic and will be electronic if they are not already.
It would actually, that's
So,
great.
I just added in 4, shall contain at least the following paper or digital documents regarding the employee.
Excellent.
That's good. Thank you. All right. I had one other thing that I wanted to ask about this, and we had lengthy discussions on this in the past, and I don't know if it's actually suitable here. But should there ever be records regarding employees' education, if there are specific levels of education that they have to attain, or their professional credentials, that initial check, when they have to have certain credentials to take a position? And I don't know if there's positions that are specifically requiring credentials other than like Clara has to have a credential for her job. I don't know if there's other jobs in the city that require anything like that. So should that not be in the personnel file when you hire a person in?
Well, you got the building, you know.
That's implied. If that's a requirement of the position, then that document, and you can correct me, Megan, but when we run the check for who we're hiring, we check to make sure that they do have the criteria required to be employed, whether that's a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a certification, that all becomes part of that candidate's record.
That's correct. They have able to upload a resume, and I believe, I'd have to double check on this, that in the background check that we run, we can actually run the education as well.
Okay, so that is part of, so could we, or would you guys be in, I honestly believe, personally, if it's not written, it is not truly required.
But it's required, I mean, we don't have every single thing that is required when we hire someone.
But if they have to have a specific level of education or specific
That's in
professional
the job
credential.
description, and then you cannot be hired unless you have that, you meet the job description, and that is done in the background check. So in the resume, if I put that I have a bachelor's degree, then then in order to be employed through the background check, they have to confirm, and there is a record that, I forget I think it's through Paycom.
ACOM.
They then confirm and verify that the degree was attained at such an institution, conferred on such a date, et cetera. All of that is detailed in there. At least that's what I was given when I was hired. It showed my degrees, places of prior employment, reference checks.
I would personally like to see that added in.
I had
don't know
to
if you
show
guys
my,
do.
like he said, you know, he had to show his work.
Even if it's
master's
on
mean, that
there
could-
though, then that
If
should
you
be
feel
on
more
the record.
comfortable, I would ask Mr. Eschenfelder, just write it in however you think that needs to be in there.
I
Had to
think
show
that
my
is-
So what, guys, why don't we just say, add all licenses or certifications required of the position?
It was to be more than just that,
And
unless I
whatever that
misunderstood.
minimum education level, if it requires a bachelor's, they need to prove the bachelor's. If it requires a master's, they need to prove the master's. That should be there.
I would think a way to handle it would be to include in 4A, onboarding forms. I think there's some of it implicit in the employment contract, and conditional offer forms. So, but I think some of that onboarding pre-screening is what we call it, is where you find some of that information. I do think that should be included, somewhat implicit, but I think you could add that. And then I think there's some validity to adding in a separate line that all current certificates, you know, if you require a certificate, that's part of the minimum that we need to
But
obtain.
what about years of experience? We have positions that require years of experience.
For me, I would think if we are responsible to have a certification to do a job, like an attorney, an engineer needs to have the engineering, then as HR, we're responsible to maintain that in their records. So does that make sense? Like, it's our job to verify throughout their career that they maintain that licensure?
It's their job to maintain the licensure and notify
we
if it's
talked about
wrong.
that.
But if you're starting out and there's a certification that's required, I think the employee should be required to present that.
I had
They
to.
need to show it. But I also believe, and it's up to the group, not just to me, if the job says it requires a bachelor's, if there's a different form that it comes through, that form needs to be included in this requirement. That, it needs to be explicitly stated, otherwise it's not required.
But it is required, that's the whole point.
But where? It doesn't, to me, it doesn't read
Okay, well,
that. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
That's what I was explaining. If you would like every requirement to be included, then we will add every requirement. And again, that is not just a certification, it's a degree or degrees, it's experience. It could be more than that, but those are the main ones. We will ensure that all of those are included in this section.
So I think that what we're after is all-encompassing language that's not overburdensome, yet accomplishes what we're after. And I can see that maybe in these, like, if we could pick out, I understand what city managers are saying, you think it's implicit in here. And I guess as I go through here, I don't necessarily see it implicit, which is employment transfer, so it's not there. I-9, no. Interview forms, maybe. Oath of employment, no. Contract, maybe. Not acknowledgement of benefits. Conditional offer forms, maybe. Retirement, no. Higher actions authorizing, approved higher action forms authorizing employment. So maybe there. Does that include, which of these things in A or any of the other subsequent sections accomplishes what we're after, which is to document any certifications that are required for these people to do their jobs? So that's what we want to make sure. Does this language, and which part particularly, has that, is that what you're after? Is that fair?
If you have this thing where you reach out to someone else and they do the background check, is that background check here? Is it listed here?
Is it in one of those things? And we're asking to help identify it in here.
Yeah.
We can't see it clearly. And I would also say throughout the tenure of the employee, it's the HR's responsibility to maintain the active certificates. And I'd ask Attorney Eichenfelder if that's true. Is it HR's responsibility to maintain current copies of required certifications or licenses?
Where the employee would have the responsibility to assure that it was there. It's not HR's responsibility to go and find that. It's the employee's responsibility to
Right.
assure that they have
Is
it.
it, in a legal sense, the city's responsibility to maintain the copy of a valid, you name it, engineering license for their engineer?
You have to have a PA, is it a PE? Do you have to be a PE? Do you have to show that you're a PE?
And
You
is
do
that
have to
the,
do
and
that.
that's a question for you, Attorney Eichenfelder.
By the way, PE is professional engineer, in case you want
Yes,
to
sir.
know. Okay, yeah.
So first of all, I want to ask Megan, in the city's hiring rubric, is there a form, so to speak, akin to an eligibility verification form, either electronically or paper?
Are we talking about E-Verify?
No. Like many employers, their HR person who's going to go through and take a look at the new hire to make sure that they're minimally qualified, there's a checklist. It'll be, have you verified they worked where they said they worked? Have you verified their address? Have you verified their 4-year degree? Is there something like that the city uses?
I guess it's within Paycom.
Yeah, we pay for that service that's outsourced to verify all the information so that the candidates meet the qualifications as they are listed in the job description and the job announcement.
And is that something that can be generated as a report if you
Yeah,
log in?
we receive that from every time we ask the company to provide us that. They provide us all of that information.
Does
All right,
Paycom,
so then there's something that's akin to an eligibility verification that you get, a report.
Yes.
does Paycom, it sounds like Paycom specifically goes out and looks at the educational requirements. So if
Yes.
it requires a 4-year degree, they verify 4-year degree.
Yes.
Do they verify,
Okay, so maybe
do they
all you need to
specifically
do-
verify the certifications that are required for the job?
That I would
Yes.
have to double check, but I would assume so.
Yeah, anything that we provide to them, they will verify that's what we're paying for.
Can you let us know that? Because I would like to revisit this one, because
But I'm explaining that that's what they provide. When I was hired, I received a report that showed that I met the qualifications of the position. Years of experience, did I meet that? And it listed all of them. And Paycom, the service that we pay for it, verified that. It verified education, employment, where I worked. There are no certification requirements for the position, but they would have verified that. We currently, with the service with Paycom that we've been using, I think, for 3 years or 4 years, I believe we have not had to verify any certifications or licenses because we have not hired anyone where that was required. since we have used Paycom.
Okay.
But if we hire our community development engineer, there was no requirement that they had to be a PE.
Yeah.
So but if there is, we would include that to Paycom, verify that they do have a professional engineering license from the state of Florida or wherever. They would then provide that to us, yes or no, and a copy of the license.
Then
That
is
is what we are paying for.
Okay, is there a way to include that report from Paycom or whatever service it will be at the time, so we don't have to rewrite it because it's not Paycom, all right?
Outside vendor.
The outside vendor that's providing the credentialing, saying that this person meets the minimum requirements, is there a way to include that as a requirement in this? A minimum requirement, I think that's, because this is the official record for that starting out.
Sure.
Is there a way to put that in there?
I
Yeah.
think the attorney was suggesting that maybe the language similar to the eligibility verification be added. Would that be suitable?
Which that
So
would
you
represent
would just
Paycom,
add
right?
eligibility verification report as one of the things that is part of the personnel file.
Excellent.
Is that listed in here, or is that something we have to
Gonna
make
add
note
that.
of?
We can
Okay.
No, that's what I would add.
And should we
And
tie
just-
that back to the job description?
Yes,
Yeah, it has.
yes.
And
The job
Paycom
description,
might-
classification requirements, all that. Yes.
Paycom might have a thing in there where they ask you to upload your documents.
Which if it's
No, you-
verified, that's
We're
what.
getting there.
No, we
Yeah.
pay them for the service to go find those documents to confirm and verify.
Correct. And then on the
Because-
other side, once they do receive one as an employee already, then they can upload themselves. That's
Yes.
where we're getting to. We're
But
not
when
quite
we're,
there. but-
when we're hiring somebody, we want the service to confirm and verify. Again, that's how our process works. We're paying somebody to do that, an outside vendor, versus having an employee contact the state of Florida and say, please verify that Mark Edwards is a professional engineer or is a certified professional accountant. The current vendor that we use, Paycom, actually does that. So they contacted, when I applied or was offered the position, they went to the University of Miami and verified that my undergraduate degree, that I received it from the University of Miami.
Understood.
We do similar at my company. We use HireRight and they verify. I guess for me, they don't do specialty certifications,
we-
but it sounds like yours does. so
We would,
that's
yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Now, in mine, of course, I had to be certified, so I gave them my certifications that
But
they
they asked-
verified.
But that was
Yeah.
before the
That's
current
before
vendor.
Paycom.
Now we ask the vendor to provide us that
Excellent.
documentation. It alleviates any issues because unfortunately, and it's a former football coach that submitted a fraudulent resume, but it wasn't until an outside vendor reviewed it
Sure.
and went and confirmed that they found that it was not correct. So we want the company, again, to verify rather than the employee providing that to us. I think
That's
it's just a more secure and definitive check.
And we want that written into here, so forever forward,
fine.
they do that. And the one last thing I don't think is resolved is that we're talking about onboarding initially. Is it and I'm gonna ask the attorney, is it smart or not to include updated records and verification of certifications throughout the life cycle of the employee? Or is that not on the human resources in the city to maintain?
And that should be the employee's responsibility, not human resources' responsibility to track the employee. If the employee has to recertify or update their licensing, they should provide that voluntarily. It shouldn't be your job to find
Well,
that.
I want to ask the attorney that question.
All right, so a couple things. First of all, before I forget it, if we are calling one of our employees a something engineer, we need to not do that anymore unless they are actually a licensed engineer, because it's actually unlawful in
They
Florida.
are, they are, Rob, they are. I was simply stating that in the job application, it did not, I'm fairly certain it did not require that they must possess a professional engineering. But in this case, our employee is.
Well, but if in the future he or she is replaced by somebody who isn't.
Right, then we would not make that right.
Yeah, we got to change the job title.
Good
Um,
lawyering. He's
so
the
then-
lawyer.
Well, no, I mean, this came up before
Yes, sir.
in my practice with one of my other clients, and like the Florida Association of Professional Engineers got on him and said, why are you doing this? We're going to file a complaint against you, so
course.
I'm sensitive to it. To answer the vice chair's question, my counsel to my clients is that we not undertake the responsibility to affirmatively hunt down people's recertifications over the years, but rather, and you'll see it later on in my draft policy, that obligation is put upon the employee to keep us up to date as to any change in their eligibility to satisfy any of the minimum qualifications, whether it's a certificate or a license or whatnot. Now, there's some things that occur. I don't know how the city's insurance provider does it, but some insurance providers require the covered entity to go out and affirmatively verify commercial driver's license holding, or that there's no accidents for that commercial driver's license, and there's reports that risk management types can pull for that. But unless our insurance coverage requires the city to do that in some affirmative basis, you can create negligence issues for yourself. If you put it in your personnel policy, we're going to go do this, and then you don't do it, and then someone hurts or injures or intentionally does something, and the licensure or lack thereof comes into play, now we're negligent because we didn't follow our own policy. So up front, we will verify you've got what we say you need to have to hold the position, and then ever thereafter, the policy will place it on the employee to let us know if they lose that eligibility. And then there's actually a section I have in here that we'll get to eventually on what happens if you lose a license or credential. And, I've got provisions that we're not going to immediately instantly fire you. We'll let you try to get it worked out, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, that's where I want to go with that.
Excellent. Thank you. A very thorough answer. I'm
That's currently
satisfied.
what we do as well. It's in the employee's hands, and then it's the director's hands as well. Like I said, with recreation, they've got that licensing, so our recreation childcare director makes sure all her folks have what they need.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
So we are on, sorry, I'm not on, sorry about that. We are on 2B5, is that correct?
Correct.
All right. The personnel record may also contain the following items as at the discretion of the human resources staff. Correspondence from citizens, coworkers, et cetera, concerning the employee's performance or his or her job or contribution to the community, accepting documents which are found to be fraudulent, false, or which are required by law to be separately maintained. All right, so that means excluding in this case, is that what that reads?
Correct.
Okay, all right. So we got it. 6, the Human Resources Department will also maintain separate and secure files of current and former employees which contain medical records or medical claim records exempt from Florida Statute 112.08. The results of the drug test, accepting discipline notices, confirming a positive result was received, medical documents provided in support of sick leave request, including those covered under FMLA, reports of a healthcare provider discussing specific health conditions or statuses associated with fitness to duty for exam, medical records provided in support of a request for accommodation of a disability under the ADA, medical records received in the course of administering a work compensation claim. So basically, almost everything medical will be kept separate, correct? Okay.
Yes, it has to.
Okay, with the exception of the, if they failed a drug test, correct?
Well,
That's
and
really just the
even
results
there-
of that, right?
Yeah, even there, the discipline notice isn't going to say you tested blah, blah. It's simply going to say you failed the drug test. And then if the employee litigates it, we'll be able to put our hands on the actual results. But the discipline notice doesn't need to give the details. It just needs to say you failed.
Okay, all right. Everybody okay?
For that. Yes.
7, notwithstanding the foregoing, the city manager and all department directors are entitled to review medical records of applicants and current employees when these officials have the business need to do so. Such instances include reviewing an employee's defense against a disciplinary action where the employee cites a medical reason for the conduct of performance, reviewing requests for sick leave, including decisions as to whether an absence is covered by the FMLA, reviewing requests for accommodation under the ADA, or determining whether the applicant or employer presents a danger to him or herself or others due to a medical condition. The city attorney or other attorney representing the city in any employment claim or suit are also authorized to examine such records to the extent the claim or suit places the medical condition on the applicant or employee at issue. And I made a note on this, but I don't know if it's necessary because of what we decided in the last meeting with the Board of Commissioners. Is there a reason the Civil Service Commission would need to be able to review these? Because we're not going to look at appeals the way we would in the past way it was written. That's actually going to go to someone else. Is there a reason the Civil Service Commission would need to look at these? If we're reviewing.
I can't think of any.
Can't either. Even if we're going through and we're reviewing documentation, make sure that we're being fair and consistent. Is there a reason there that we would need to review these? That's where I'm thinking that it may be necessary. Because we're supposed to review our own policy, make sure it's being applied effectively and accurately for every employee equally. So should we be able to see those in those cases only, not just to look at it, but as a review of, are we doing this consistently for every case?
Notwithstanding the foregoing, does the
think that's
clause
ahead of-
before,
Because it's saying have the officials have the business need to do so, and we are supposed to review our policies. We're supposed to basically, I don't think the wording is audit, but we're supposed to go through an audit to assure it's being effectively implemented.
But you have no role to play in compliance with state or federal employment laws. And you shouldn't. I mean, that's something that if someone's going to raise that, they need to go to court and raise it.
Okay.
And I really
All
wouldn't
right.
want a sunshine body to be discussing medical records. You all can only talk about stuff in the sunshine. And so it's not a forum that lends itself to talking about individualized medical conditions.
Thank you for clarifying that, Mr. Ashenfolder. Just that state, federal, that makes total sense. All right. Okay. Everybody else okay?
I'm good with that, yes.
Number 8, in the event a city official examines records, which includes information which is otherwise confidential or exempt from public disclosure under the law, such official must exercise care and discretion so as not to further communicate any such information to subordinates or an employee's coworkers unless there is a valid legal reason to do so. City officials in doubt as to their duties in such circumstances are encouraged to seek advice from the city attorney.
Excellent.
Sounds good to me. You okay, everybody? 9. Hold on, for 8. If there's a reason that information is shared, should it be documented that it's being shared?
I do have a form in the personnel files that say this was requested for public record, so there is a log of,
But if
a
it's-
paper trail of who looks at it.
If a city official is going to look at this record and then they're going to share some component of that, whatever they feel is necessary or deemed to be necessary, to protect the city, is there ever a reason to document that whatever the extent of the information has been disclosed and to who it's been disclosed to?
I'd have to refer to Rob.
Me, it's saying don't share.
Don't share it, but,
It's not.
but do we need to record that it's been shared if it has been shared? Is there a
No,
reason
I
for
think,
that?
I think that you get into the same issue there. I understand your instinct, Mr. Chair, but it's if you create a rule that basically says you have to create something along the lines or analogous to a computer use log for anybody that may lay their eyes on something, then it's almost certain that you're not going to administer that 100% consistently because it's just not going to happen. I mean, management is
Okay.
very fluid. Employee says, I need to have leave today, because of my blah, blah condition, the manager, the director contacts HR and says, can I, verify this or that? It's just hard to say, oh, wait a minute, now that you looked at this, or what if you didn't even look at it? What if you just talked to HR about what's in the record? And now we have to create a brand new public record log of that, access or whatnot. It's very bureaucratic. I say, being a German, and so I would advise against it. I mean, I hear your sentiment about that, but at some extent, we have to rely on management, not just poking around just to poke around and be nosy. And that's part of why HR stands as a gatekeeper. And if HR sees people poking around, HR is going to flag it to the manager and say, look, I don't know why this director is looking into these files. You may want to talk to that director and find out what he or she is doing. I mean, it does happen. One of my clients did have a situation where a fairly high-ranking official was peeking into the records of employees because they were one of the few people in that jurisdiction that had computer access, but it was caught in a computer audit, and that's how that person got fired. So, but just creating a rule that says you got to keep a log, I fear that it won't be followed consistently, and now it's a problem.
Okay. I understand. Everybody else okay? 9, the city manager is responsible for ensuring that human resources records are controlled, maintained, disposed of, and that requests for copies are processed in accordance with the Public Records Act and the rules of the Florida Division of Archives, History, and Records Management. To that end, the city manager is authorized to develop such additional administrative procedures and forms so as to accomplish the responsibility. Again, can this be covered with one of those things to where that we can at least
Exactly.
see what that is ahead of time?
This is
Okay.
another example of why we just need to cover this once
Okay,
at
good.
a place that makes sense.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good.
All right, 10, while managerial personnel responsible for drafting performance evaluations may, to assist them in drafting annual evaluations, maintain separate notes on positive, negative conduct or performance, including notes on verbal counseling events. Such records are public records, and if specifically referenced in an evaluation or discipline notice, must be attached thereto. I have no issues, I'm fine.
So I have a question for Attorney Eichenfelder. Our company has a policy where after a year, a bad review, written warning is removed from the file. And that could prevent from, somebody using that against somebody for many years. Is there any validity to using that approach, any value, or?
Can I add something
sir.
that I would
Yep.
know of? Jobs I've had in the past, I think removing those counselings from a file could be counterproductive, because if there's a historical pattern of behaviors, you may need to go back a couple of years to say, hey, this has been an issue. It'll be this way for a while, and then boom, you're better, and then, wait, it's doing it again. What's going on? I agree with you that if you're late to work 5 times 1 year and 20 years later, you shouldn't use that against the person. I know that. But there's certain infractions that could happen that you may want the historical perspective, but it realistically has to be a professional weighting between Mr. Gomez, the directors, and Human Resources. Is this really a valid concern? And honestly, if there was an appeal
True.
by the
Yeah, it should
employee,
be covered.
then they should be able to go back and say, hey, wait a minute, 20 years ago, I was late 5 times. I'm late once this year. That's no reason to get rid of me. There's things like that, and I realize that is an oversimplification, but I know that there's reasons that Mr. Gomez would need to be able to look at some historical patterns.
with
Unfortunately, I
the
think
due
it's part of
cause.
public record, so I'd have
Yes,
to look
true.
at Clara for the retention on when it
okay.
can go away.
Yeah, we have,
True.
there is state law where certain personnel discipline records if it's already been satisfied or whatever, there are time spans on them.
Okay,
There's, there's destruction date, time periods on them.
so there are destruction dates for those.
I think the longest one, if it's a situation where it had to be investigated, I think that one's 5 years. But if you have a summary, now that's kept longer.
Okay,
But like if they were written up, just like one written warning and it was nothing that led to a investigation, I think that's like 3 or 4 years or something like that, But
Well,
within
so-
that
but-
time
but-
period, I think if they're going to keep doing it, I don't know if you'll want them around anymore.
yeah. What were you saying, Mr.
Yeah,
Ashenfelder?
We're kind of drifting over into public records exemption, destruction schedule issues. The core issue is that was asked by the vice chair. Is there any merit to getting rid of things? My strong counsel is no. Number one, that we're a public records agency, unlike your private company. Your company could choose to do whatever it wants to with its records, but under the Records Act, once you create a public record, it has to be kept and maintained, at least for the records retention schedule period. And if the document is included within the personnel file, then you use the personnel file records retention schedule, which is a very, very long records retention schedule. The other part of it not just does management, as the chair indicated, frequently have the need to go back and look at long-term patterns and so forth, but I cannot tell you how many times going back and looking at an employee's overall arc of his or her career, evaluations, discipline notices, counselings, has been of assistance in litigation when defending management's decision. And this is especially true when you get into equal treatment arguments where the employee says, well, you didn't treat me the same as Billy Bob or whatever. And so being able to go back and look at everybody's records over the long arc helps to establish that pro and con. I mean, because it can also be used by an employee's attorney to show there isn't being equal treatment because, you're comparing me to people that have all these records where they've done this for years and they still haven't been fired, and yet you just got done firing me and I've only done it once. So it cuts both ways. But I'm a big advocate. I know it creates more files, but I'm a big advocate for keeping all of those disciplines and counselings in the official file.
I am totally convinced. It was from a managerial perspective, and I forgot it is a public entity, and I totally am on board. Good.
I didn't even think about the public entity. I was thinking of things that I've known I've encountered.
I think if it's a continuous discipline, you're going to have something new all the time.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Are we okay to move forward, everyone? Okay, 2, personnel files, B, access and retention of personnel files. So here we go. This is page 2-12. Personnel files, official and informational copies are public records. Am I repeating something?
No, this is after the,
It's after that.
I realized that
It looks
after,
the
as
same.
we were-
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Personnel files, official and informational copies are public records subject to review under Florida Statute 11907, subject to any applicable exemption or exemptions. Official employee personnel files may be reviewed by Human Resources Department during normal working hours. The records custodian or designee will assist and supervise during the review. Documents cannot be removed or rearranged within the official personnel file during review. Note, the employees holding certain positions are entitled under Florida law to request that certain personally identifying information such as home addresses not be released by other governmental agencies which may be in possession of this information. It is the responsibility of each employee holding such a position to make these requests to the other governmental agencies. Mr. Ashenfelder, for consistency in the documentation, there's a note just like this on 1 or 2 pages prior. Can we make all those italicized, all the notes?
Actually, I just, in looking at it, it's essentially the same note. So I'm just going to strike the second one out if it's okay.
Strike the second note then?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so that's good. Okay, 2, request concerning past or present employee personnel information should be referred to the Human Resources Department. The Human Resources staff will respond to inquiries from agencies and the general public regarding disclosure of official personnel data. 3, in accordance with the Florida Public Records Act, copies of personnel files may be made and furnished to requesters upon payment of the statutory fees. Money collected is remitted to the city's general fund. Employees are not charged for single copies made from their official personnel files. However, they shall be charged the established rate for additional copies. The Human Resources Department is responsible for reviewing a personnel file prior to production or copying to ensure, prior to production or copying, to ensure all material exempt from public records disclosure has been recovered. 4, official personnel files must be retained for a length of time determined by State Florida Bureau of Archives and Records Management. This period is currently 25 years following the employee's effective date of separation from city employment. Because of the permanency of such records, department directors must carefully review documents to determine their necessity before requesting entry to the official personnel file. The city manager, in consultation with the city attorney as needed, is authorized to develop administrative procedures concerning the proper storage of and access to records, including medical files or of current or former employees. Okay, I'm okay with that. You guys okay with that?
Okay.
Everybody good? 3, probationary period, initial probationary period. 1, the first 12 months of employment serve as a probationary period for all non-at-will employees filling regular full-time or part-time positions and are used for the following. A, to provide an adjustment period for an employee to become familiar with his or her job duties and responsibilities. B, to provide on-the-job instruction, guidance, and counseling. C, to observe and evaluate employee job performance. D, to remove, discharge an employee whose job performance fails to meet required work standards or who, for reasons stated in Section 11B of the policy, must be removed or discharged for other reasons. For me personally, I think 12 months is long, but I don't know how it's normally done within city governments.
6 months.
Currently, we're doing 6.
6 months? So can we change that to 6 months then? I think that's, say it again, Mr. Ashenfelder?
I said, yep.
6 months. Okay,
And
all right.
Jerry, I might recommend that we try not reading to see if it speeds it up any. I keep flipping through.
Okay.
I think we're.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Number 2, I have questions. Probationary employees are not entitled to utilize the employee complaint procedure or appeal process unless a claim of unlawful determination is made, nor are they entitled to any hearings except as provided by section blah, 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 that policy. I think we already covered that, though. We did say probationary periods are not entitled to appeal. Is that correct? Did we make that
Well,
determination?
if we're to be consistent with who is civil service protected, a probationary employee is not yet civil service protected. Like you just got done telling him,
Okay.
you're at will for this first 6 months because we're looking at you and we just need to be able to quickly get rid of you if you're not working out. It makes no sense then to say, but even in that first 6 months, you can do a termination appeal and we have to show just cause. We've got to have some period where management can just say, this just isn't working out. I'm not going to build a case against you with progressive discipline because I can tell you're not going to work out. And so you're therefore moving on.
Okay. All right. Anybody else got questions with any of those? Because I don't. My notes, I don't have any other notes on those.
So I may just take a minute to skim through
Okay.
and if that's okay. I'm good with those. Paul, any additional concerns in that section?
Stelka, you good? Okay. We're going to move on to 4 pay hours of work and work week. A, general policies. I have only one thing I'd like added in this page. And I know that this may not be the best idea, so I welcome any feedback, negative or positive on it. There have been times that I've come to the city on non-federal holidays, non-disaster days, things like that, and I've not been able to get through the front door. One thing I would like to see, just for general hours for the city, is that this facility should be open between 8 a.m. and 4:30 p.m., because that's your normal hours of work. Is that correct? Between those hours, this facility, on the days that are not federal holidays, those days that are taken for holidays, or any type of declared emergency. Because I've had it said to me by neighbors even, that they've come up here and they could not get in the building. And if you're providing a service to the community, why isn't the building open? If it's not a holiday and it's within those working hours.
To be honest, I'm not sure why. If that ever happens again, please let us know the date and time so we can reference that, if
Could
there's
you
an issue.
expand? I'm sorry, maybe I didn't understand. You said that people have come here to City Hall between 8 a.m. and 4:30 and said the building was not open.
They couldn't get through the doors.
They couldn't come into City Hall. Do you have a day, time, or when?
Don't have it.
'Cause this is the first time I've ever heard of that
All right.
in 22 and a half months that I've been here.
I've mentioned this in one meeting before, but it was like a passing reference. And I don't have the dates. I wish I could tell you that, because I mean, I wasn't on the commission
Okay.
prior to that point. I know I've come up here, and I can't tell you what the date is, but I've not been able to get through those doors. I don't know why.
To get here to the lobby
To the lobby, yeah.
between 8 a.m. and 4:30 p.m.
That has
During the
happened.
qualifying.
Yeah,
Okay.
It wasn't a holiday. I remember that. I
No,
can't
we
tell you
need
what
to
the
be
day.
made aware. I mean,
Okay.
when I'm here, it's open even usually more than that, but this is the first that I've heard of this, so that's an important fact to know because we are open 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m.
Okay.
And typically, we do have a note, because there are
Yeah,
times
if-
that we do close. For example, on Thursday, we're having our employee Thanksgiving luncheon, so we will be closing City Hall for a little bit.
Totally
so-
understand it.
Yeah,
Yep.
and when we do
Typically,
that,
we do
we'll
notes.
put notices out.
Yeah.
And I know last year, during our qualifying period, I think they had a contractor up here, and I think they was closed, the door was closed, but we just kept watching. If they let us know, we let them in.
Okay.
We had a note on the door that
Yeah.
where to go to advise, so,
During our construction of the lobby, correct?
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah, that's a little disturbing that people have come here and they stated that
Well-
the doors were locked and they could not come in here.
I can tell you.
Again, that's, I take that very, very personally, and that is very, very disturbing, and I need to be made aware of that.
Okay. Going forward, I will.
Yeah, if that
record it and
happens,
let
they
you
need to
know.
let us know.
Yeah. I wish I could tell you.
Thank you.
Because
Yep.
I wasn't on the commission. I didn't know.
No,
I
that's,
do
I
know
mean,
I've
it
been
doesn't
told
matter.
that,
It could
so,
be at
Yeah.
any time, but that's
Yeah.
not how it should be at all.
Okay.
Well, it's a good response, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I can tell you on this page, I have no other comments on that page.
I'm good, Paul. You're, okay.
You guys good?
Yep.
So we're going to go on to the next page, which is 4-2, pay hours, work and work week, B, allocation of work hours, work week and work period. I got to tell you, when I looked at this, I thought it was interesting. I didn't know your work week started on Saturday and went through Friday. To me, that was interesting. Is the normal hours, is it 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. or 8 a.m. to 4:30? Is that just general for all the departments, or?
I think this is just something that was in Rob's. Typically, it is 8 to 4:30, unless a different schedule by their department director.
Does that need to be corrected, or is that okay, Mr. Gomez?
No,
I
mean,
changed it to 4:30.
yeah, our work, it's to 4:30.
So should it be changed to 4:30? Okay,
Yeah, I did already.
okay. That was the first line. I'm sorry, I didn't clarify what I was talking about, guys. On item 5, work-at-home program, I disagree with the statement. I've had a discussion with all the city commissioners, including the mayor, and only one person said that they don't like the idea of having ability to make remote work. Now, that doesn't mean it's for every employee. Should never be for every employee because a sanitation worker can't work from home, all right? There are some jobs that it's possible to do remote, and we have an evolving community. We have an evolving environment, and there are people that want to work from home. It's something that's moving forward in the future. And before we do another review, I expect this might be an issue for hiring. I know that this is not correct. The Madeira Beach Board of Commissioners does not recognize a work-at-home program is not accurate, because I did personally have a discussion with every one of them.
Well, first, it's very, very important that you not say that you have discussed with each commissioner and polled them, because that would be a sunshine violation.
Why am I not allowed
if
to
you-
talk to them individually? I thought that was
You-
mentioned to me once before I
well,
was allowed to.
You need to be very careful about conveying what each of them are talking about, because you might unintentionally draw them into a sunshine violation.
Okay, what am I allowed to say in that case? Because I did
You can ask
individually ask
each of
questions.
them, you can ask each of them what their personal position is. You can share your personal position. You simply need to be careful not
share
to
theirs.
communicate
Okay.
to one what the other one has said.
Understood.
And
Now, I
so-
never communicated anything with any of them what anyone else said. That's
Well,
for-
but you kind of just did when you said you've talked to them all and here's what they all have to say.
Even though I'm in
so-
this meeting format, it still isn't safe to say that.
Right,
That's
right,
what you're
because
saying.
they're the ones that are subject to sunshine.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to keep them out of trouble.
All right, I'm
I mean,
trying to
I
understand too, so
completely-
I don't
Because
make the
it's a
mistake
live-
in another way.
Because it's
Yeah.
a broadcast.
I get it. Okay, I just want to make sure I don't make mistakes like that. I'm trying to understand it.
I don't understand it
I-
either, so.
Yeah.
I guess my question to all of you, to the board, is how would you define a work-at-home program? All 5 days, all the time working at home, 1 or 2 days a week, it's scheduled, remote, again, part-time, full-time?
I think that has to be based on the needs of the
Okay.
city. It can never be, you're going to work at home 4 days a week, 5 days a week. Plus, you don't get that interaction that you need with other people within the department to make sure you're all on the same plan, you're all doing the same stuff. There should never be at home constantly
What-
every day of the week. And it really has to be based upon what you can make happen for those employees, what works for the city.
Yeah, and this
I
doesn't
think-
specify whether it is the employee only works from home or 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. I think it leaves it open. And from my perspective, I do support if we had positions that requested, hey, can I work 1 day or 2 days, or schedule 1 or 2 days every month, or what, I'm perfectly fine with that. I think that flexibility is a huge component of the workplace in 2023 and beyond, and I'm fully supportive of that. So we can certainly include and, possibly reword this if I were to ask each of the members of the city commission individually. I'm sure they would each would provide a response, and then we could go from those responses. But I'm fully supportive of this, and I do have employees that have asked if they could work a day and to schedule it either a few days in advance or a week in advance. Or in one instance where an employee they were working 1 day at home a week for a period of time.
I don't think any of us want to get in
Guys-
the way of you managing the way you have to. It's just, I am certain that there are jobs and employee things they're looking for. People are looking to be able to work from home on occasion. And it doesn't work. Like we said, sanitation workers, you can't
Yeah,
work
that's a
from
tough
home.
one. Yeah.
It's got to be realistic for the job,
Guys, I think you're getting bogged down. All the first sentence is that the city writ large does not have a work-at-home program. That's all it's trying to convey. And the rest of the paragraph provides the manager with all of the flexibility that
To
you all
do
are
that.
talking about. He can approve people to work from home to accomplish projects because they have a broken toe, but they could still do their typing, whatever it is. All that is intended to say is that we don't have a work-at-home program that all employees can subscribe to or be entitled to.
Could that be clarified on here then?
Yeah, I think I would reword the first sentence.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think
'Cause
that's the
first
comment,
sentence-
Rob.
To me, the first sentence
I would
says-
probably just remove the first sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's my thoughts on
That
it.
would be my recommendation too.
That would make sense. It just
It's
leaves,
out.
yeah. Okay, I mean, I think that makes sense to me.
Are you okay with that, Mr. Tilka? Mr. Gomez, thank you for clarifying that. And Mr.
The
Eschenfelder,
first
thank you for
sentence.
correcting me. I appreciate that. I don't want to make those mistakes. Okay?
No, I'm out of correction, just trying to keep everybody safe.
All right. I get it. I don't want to get anyone in trouble, especially myself. All right. So medical attention. I think that carries on to the next page. I don't have any other questions on this page other than that one thing. Does anyone else?
I don't think so.
Or on the
That looks
430,
pretty
which we said
good.
we'd correct as well. Yeah. Are you guys okay to move on to 4.3? Page 4.3?
Yes.
I can tell you the only thing in there that I'm curious about is the last sentence of 8, electronic timekeeping. I know it's got in here FLSA non-exempt, which means basically they're hourly workers and they got to track their time. Do you, for documentation purposes, do your exempt employees at least have to swipe once a day? How is that controlled? I don't know what you do. I'm just curious.
Exempt employees are
You
not
don't, so they don't
required.
have to do anything with that. Okay.
Just record when they're taking, it's by exception, so
Okay.
vacation, sick.
Understood. So that does, my question on that doesn't even matter, so that's okay.
We just work 24 hours a day. We're on call 24 hours a day.
Well said.
I get it, I get it. I think the person on call 24 hours a day is probably Mr. Gomez. So it's, I don't have any other questions in that group, do you guys?
Yep, looks good to me.
Are we ready to move on to 4-4?
Yes.
4-4 is pay eligibility, Part C, 1 extra hours. When I read just above item A, non-exempt employees, there's a paragraph there. Overtime or compensatory time be documented. Is that supposed to be shall be documented? It seems like there's a word missing there to me.
Yes.
Yeah, the word shall.
Shall,
Okay.
will.
I was wondering, I'm like, okay, I'm missing something here. All right.
Yep.
That's the only thing I saw on that.
Thank you for correcting me.
For non-exempt employees, are you always looking at their overtime, or do you allow the directors to do that?
The directors do and
So
approve it.
does this, maybe the way
I mean,
it reads is okay, but it says absent emergency circumstances, overtime must be approved in advance by the city manager in advance. So really, there's two
No, that
advances
doesn't,
there.
that doesn't happen, yeah.
Yeah, so, or can instead of that second in advance, which is actually kind of redundant, can that be changed to or designated, what would it be?
Just or designee.
Or designee? Can that be put in there, Mr. Eschenfelder? Absent emergency circumstances, overtime must be approved in advance by the city manager or designee.
How about by the manager with authority to approve?
Or the manager with authority to approve?
Yes.
Does anybody else have questions on that page?
Good.
Okay, so we're moving on to 4-5. 4-5 is overtime and compensatory comp time. Okay. When they do the compensatory comp time, time off in place of overtime is called compensatory comp time. So, in other words, say like the city elects not to pay the employee the time and a half, that pay period, but they get comp time at time and a half, right?
Yes.
So how does that work when they're going into the next pay period or whenever that they're trying to
The
use
comp time
that?
hours accrue over time. I will tell you that I'm not a fan of it. I believe if you're going to work additional hours, you should be paid for those hours. And Rob can clarify, and there probably is minimal legal cases, but I can see an employee accruing over a period of time and then coming back and saying, you didn't pay me for the additional hours I worked. Well, I provided you comp time. Well, but I haven't been paid. We provided you comp time. You have an accrual, a balance of 80 hours. I have not been paid for those 80 hours. Is that an issue?
The things that I've read, and I could be very wrong, so this is Mr. Eschenfelder's going to need to tell me if I'm not understanding. It's really up to the city to make a decision if they want to offer comp time. They're allowed to. They don't have to pay
Correct.
the time and a half. But if you're saying you don't want to do it, would it be best to remove that so you don't run into those issues?
I would prefer that if an employee works additional hours, and I think some department heads have been using the comp time, and it's paid at the end of the year. So I could work for 11 months and not be paid for several hundred hours until the end of the year. Some employees like that because they were being paid, I think they still are, right around Christmas time.
It's a bonus.
So it's a bonus. I believe if you work those hours, you should be paid the hours that you worked. I might be old-fashioned, but I
agree.
think you should be paid for those hours. I understand the need for, the reason, or a reason for compensatory time is in effect to lower your overtime budget. That's not always the case, because employees will work, and instead of being paid this pay period, I will be paid in 6 weeks. You're still paying the same amount of time. Unless I'm misunderstanding how we're managing or have been managing, and I will tell you, in all 4 cities I've worked, it's been managed differently. And as an auditor for 16 years in Clearwater, we did away with almost all comp time, I think, except in the fire and the police departments.
I would agree with that, and I'd have to look at this, but I have a feeling that if an employee has a raise during the time that they have compensatory time and then they take it, they get the comp time with their raise on it, so.
That really shouldn't.
It shouldn't be, it
That
should be at
should
the
be-
rate that you accrued it,
Right.
but we would have to,
Mr. Gomez, I'm in agreement with you. I think that if they're working, they deserve to be paid. Otherwise, why are you having them work?
and we haven't, I don't believe we've had a big issue with a budgetary issue with overtime. Again, we're a fairly small city. Departments should be budgeting for overtime, or if the overtime becomes excessive, which it can with turnover, for example, in sanitation or in fire, not necessarily in fire due to turnover, but it could be sickness because of the 24-hour shifts, but certainly those are really the only instances where your overtime can be excessive. But I think that's explained fairly well. However, I just believe it's something departments need to budget. I just want alleviate any issues going forward, and perhaps we haven't had any, but I just don't want to have any pay issues going forward. They are never fun. Let's do it correct, but that's just my.
In that past lawsuit that we mentioned in that joint meeting, this was an issue.
About
This was an
hours
issue.
worked or hours not worked.
And there was compensation paid out to the employee, which didn't go to court, but it was settled out of court, and it was that issue. So
Let's hear from the attorney if he has any opinions to add to this,
I'd like to get rid of it.
if he's there.
Well, I mean, it's, unlike private employers, public employers are allowed by Congress to do comp time. The manager is correct. Its use and purpose is to allow public employers to require people to work over 40 hours in a work week and not pay them. But of course, the downside is that you're now carrying that liability moving forward. And so if, it's the manager's shop to run, and if he's comfortable that all departments of the city can operate by just, if you work more than 40, you're going to get paid right there, that pay period, we can just eliminate all reference to comp time in the personnel policy. Just going to need to understand that moving forward, unless you put it all back in, you're going to have a hard time using comp time.
Is there any hybrid?
There's a bunch of rules in the CFRs about comp time, and you have to set things out. You got to get the employee to sign that they're separately, that they're willing to do comp time. So, if you want it out, we can take it out. Just let me know.
Is there a hybrid we can offer where we, allow the option, but encourage the payment? Is that?
If you have the option, you need to have all these rules surrounding the option.
Okay.
And then it's just up to the manager as he or she manages the city to tell the leadership team, I do not want to authorize comp time, because it's not the employee's choice. If management wants the employee to be paid just straight overtime, then that's what's going to happen. It's only when management seeks to not pay overtime, then management can designate it as comp time. The employee doesn't get to pick.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Is it okay if I say something?
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Gomez, would you be okay? Because if we have to go through a whole iteration of sequences to add this back in, if it needs to be added back in, can we put a statement in there that states that comp time cannot be authorized unless approved by the city manager?
Sure.
Because then it could put an
That's a
end to
good
it,
idea.
which realistically, I agree with you, it shouldn't be there. But is there any circumstance where you think where if we removed it, we could set ourselves up for problems? I don't know.
I don't think so. I mean, again, my biggest concern has always been what I've said a few times is an employee, well, I've worked these hours, I haven't been paid, now I'm gonna, file a claim, et cetera. I mean, doesn't happen that frequently, but.
That's a completely different issue. And the personnel policy already mandates that employees honestly report their time, right? You guys just went over that provision.
Mm-hmm.
And so if an employee comes and says, oh, I worked hours and I didn't get paid, my very first response to that employee's attorney is, why didn't your employee put it into the payroll system?
No, Rob, I'm referencing that the employee did, but they are accrued. The employee has a balance of X number of comp time hours. They are in that employee's accrued balance for leave or to be paid out later. And again, an employee accrues them, let's say they accrue them the first 3 months of the fiscal or payroll year. Now we're approaching the end of the payroll year. The employee says, I worked these 300 hours. They are in my balance as comp time, but I have not been paid for those 300 additional hours that I worked.
Right. And our response is, if you wish to use your comp time,
We can
put in
pay
a
them.
leave request.
Right. We will pay them to you now.
I mean,
That's a good question.
so the employee can't demand that you let him or her be off work for a month and a half so that they can burn down their comp time. I mean, they're
Correct.
required to come. And in terms of how the comp time is paid out, a lot of employers, number one, you put a cap on it. So
Right.
you would say, you're not allowed to accumulate comp time in excess of whatever, and then you just program your computer to not let that happen. And then you couple it with a payout thing, just to say you can't carry it forward for 5 years in the future or whatever, because it is the case that when a comp time hour is paid out, it's paid out at the current hourly rate. And so if the person's gotten raises, and that's why a lot of people like to sit on their comp time, because it sort of grows a little retirement bank or Christmas bank or whatever people want to use. So I'm in no way, saying you guys should use comp time. I just want to make sure that the policy has all the tools and rules in place, should you or a future manager decide to use it. And, to accommodate what everyone's talking about for at least the current conditions, just add the sentence, comp time cannot be awarded or approved absent authorization of the city manager.
Well,
And that way, go ahead.
Can we add
Sorry.
one more in there, that there's a maximum amount of hours?
You could,
In there, I think, right?
Is that in there?
There already is in
Yeah, it says here.
3C, so
yeah,
you
next
can,
is, I will say that the three, it says time off in place of overtime. And I don't believe we use it across the entire organization as time off. The majority of it is paid out, I believe.
I would say, yeah.
So we're simply deferring paying somebody
You're not really
overtime.
saving money. You're losing money in the
We're,
long run,
well, we're
right?
not saving, yeah, we're paying it out at some point of the year.
And typically at a higher rate.
Well, if they get a 15% pay raise, say, they get a 15% pay raise, and they hold on to those hours until
they're getting
December.
paid, right, they're getting paid much higher.
They got a 15% pay raise,
Yes.
way ahead of where it should have been. So I personally think that, one, we either delete it, or two, we put it in there to where it can't be
Right,
used
it's
unless you
Well, that I
specifically
approve
authorize
it,
it.
but again, that it is, as is listed here, and I apologize, I skipped right over it, it is time off, not time paid out. It is time off.
Yes.
So instead of paying an employee 1.5 times their salary, we provide them 1.5, whatever the hours are, for them to be off at a future time. That has only occurred sparingly. Most often in the time I've been here, we have paid. If somebody had 100 hours of comp time, at the end of it, we paid them for those 100 hours. And it would be at a higher rate if they received a raise during the year.
Can we just put it
So
in?
let's just, I don't mean to interrupt you, but it could just be time off as opposed to time paid out. And that's what this says.
I think in our current policy, they have to take it within that pay period. Am I not mistaken in that?
No, that's flexing
That's
time.
flex time, if you're flexing within the same time. But I think that's what you've been doing is for your comp time that
Yeah,
they,
the girls in my office, they love to get off early on Fridays. So if they work
Yes.
an extra hour, or if they need to, there's something they need to do on Friday, they leave. They
yeah,
don't
she's
want-
flexing their schedule.
They
which
don't.
Some departments do that.
They don't want overtime, and they
Right.
don't want comp time, they want to get out of there.
But we have provided, especially some of the administrative areas, comp time, and then they do, in some instances, they were taking it as time off. In most instances, we were paying them. So paying them time and a half, we're paying you the same as overtime. And again, just to me, I'd rather that you get paid when you accrue it, that same pay period.
Would you guys agree that we should ask to have it added in there, then it can only be used if it's authorized by the city manager? I would also like to see I don't think we could change the fire EMS because I think that's a contractual obligation. I would like to see the 120 hours reduced down to 40. There's no reason that you should be going more than a week, especially if they need to take time off. You can't give them 3 weeks in a row. That's not going to happen. So yeah.
So that's why we were paying them.
Yeah, but when it says 40 hours, I mean, that's literally, that's time and a half. That's at time and a half. So they're not going to work 40 hours because that's 60. Does that make sense? So they can't go beyond 40 hours of comp time. Would that be okay with you guys?
Fine with me,
I
makes
think
sense.
if you
Employees
matched it
mostly
to 40,
incorporate the comp time to their vacation time.
I'm sorry, one more
Do
time.
do employees try to get extended vacation by incorporating the comp time? Is it?
No,
No.
we've
not
been
gonna-
paying it out.
It's the bonus.
It's been
And
it's
the
been-
bonus is not.
I mean, we'll call it a bonus, but they're being compensated and paid for time worked,
Yeah,
just not now, at a later point in the year.
it seems
No, I'd say let's
more
keep this going.
complicated than it needs to be.
I would agree with that, yes.
I worked at a place where it was maxed, but it didn't have to be paid out at a certain time. They had the bank, you can use some of it. If you just so happen to add a little more, it just couldn't go over a certain amount of hours.
Can we, is that allowed by law? Could we do that to where we say that it has to be approved by the city manager? It can't be done unless it's approved by the city manager. Reduce the hours to 40, and that's the max, and there's no payout on it that would stay there. Is
yeah, it's
that
just
legal? Is that legal? There's no payout on it. It is, they have
Just
40
time
hours,
off.
it can sit
No,
there
no,
for.
no, you have to pay, if the employee leaves, you have to pay it because it's earned wages.
That I understand.
Okay, right,
But
but-
what I'm saying is while they're employed by the city, when they hit that 40 hours, they can't accumulate anymore. Everything else has to be time and a half. They got to get their hourly wage.
They would be paid for working overtime.
Yeah.
Yeah, you couldn't convert it to comp time.
Are we able to do a stipulation where they have to use it within 30 days
Yes.
and then it gets paid out?
I like that,
Automatically? I like
quarterly,
that idea,
something
too.
like that. I
But-
agree with that.
But the reality is they shouldn't be going over, they shouldn't go over, I wouldn't,
Well, just
I don't even like the
anything.
idea of them using
Even if they
it.
have 5 hours, they
Yeah.
get 30 days to use it and then it's paid out automatically. It doesn't matter how many hours, well, max obviously 40, but they have to use that comp time when they got it within 30 days.
Yes.
Can we write that in there, Mr. Ashenfelder?
Well, you can, but I think at that tight of a window, it's really doesn't make much sense to even attempt to account for it. Like, I mean, just think about it. I'm gonna work 45 hours and I'm going to be paid comp time because the manager said that's how I'm going to be paid. So now I have 5 comp time hours, and within the next 30 days, I've got to take 5 hours worth of leave. I might not be able to do that. And so all the city's doing is extra accounting maneuvers to pay out every 30 days. If it's that short of a period of time, just don't do comp time.
I agree.
I agree. I would prefer,
Just pay overtime.
I would prefer it's gone, but I don't know, what do you guys feel?
I think it could be eliminated and save a lot of hassle.
So do I.
It
What do you
just
think?
alleviates additional accounting,
What do you
really.
think, Christine?
Yeah, mine
I
just
don't
get
have a
out
lot
on
of
Friday.
experience with comp time, so I have no opinion,
Again,
honestly.
it's simply so the cities started to do it in lieu of paying overtime.
Sure.
For some reason here and in another city that I was in, the cities were using it as, in essence, to defer payments.
Sure.
Which doesn't save you any money. So it doesn't really make any sense. Again, I worked the last 2 weeks, pay period ended on Saturday night.
Yeah.
And in those 2 weeks, I worked 10 extra hours. So in lieu of getting paid, when we get paid Friday, 10 hours of overtime, I now have 10 hours, just simplicity, 10 hours of comp time, and I have that in my balance. That balance continues until at some point I either take those hours as leave, or at the end of the year, I'm paid for those hours. And that just seems bizarre. Again, employees were doing it because you could get a bonus, in essence, around the holidays in December. It just doesn't make any sense. I think it's just a nice thing to do, but it's additional accounting for certain.
Is there any reason at all that you could, I mean, I'm between, take it out, the rationale makes sense, or is there any time at which you could ever foresee there being a value where you might want to use it? And then we put ourselves by, because if we say by approved by the city manager, to me, that makes it has to come to you, and then you still have the ability to use it. I don't know what that could be.
Right, that's the
But,
more I thought of it, you're right.
That's.
'Cause if I
still-
allow one,
if
why
you're-
would I not allow everyone?
Well, if,
Well, that's what would come back to
how,
me.
how it could manifest itself, the reality is most public employers do comp time as much or more because it's popular with employees so that employees can save up a Christmas fund or whatever. It's just part of the compensation game that's played. And it's the employer does it not because they think they're saving money, but because it's an incentive to have that employee be happy and get their little payout. But it also is true that in 2007 and 2008, which I worked through, the bottom fell out of tax revenue. And I was with Manatee County at the time, and I had the very sad task of helping to coordinate the layoff of over 450 county employees who were let out the door with their boxes. And in those periods, with revenue going way down, you bet that the county did not want to pay its employees in those moments. It wanted to book comp time because it saw that in the future, tax revenues would come back up. So I'm not saying that Madeira Beach will ever be in that position or whatnot. It's a smaller agency, but there are times when cash flow can hurt and comp time can be used. That being said, if the manager is very, very comfortable to just not do it, then let's just take it out.
What would you recommend, Mr. Gomez? You want it,
I think we could take it out.
everybody okay with it?
And we pay employees, for the hours that are worked when they are worked.
Okay, how do we deal with, because if we do that with this, how do we deal with what's going on right now and making sure it doesn't continue so they don't run into problems?
They do flex time.
Use flex time? No, what I'm saying is
No,
there's some accruals there already.
Flex time is completely different. And so
Right.
what will happen is when the commission adopts the new personnel policy, the manager will ensure that all existing comp time accumulations are paid out in a final time. And then moving forward, there will be no more.
Good. Is there anything, I don't,
think that's good.
I'm not running your job, but is there anything you can do to make them stop doing this?
We'll take a look at what the activity is.
Okay. I don't,
Yeah, and it's
I'm
not a
trying
matter
to-
of, management approves comp time. An employee cannot use comp time. Management has to
Approve it,
to
right.
authorize it and allow it. So there is no employees stop doing. It's more, we
managing
will
it.
stop having it be an option.
So we're taking out number 3 totally?
Yes.
We're taking out all reference to comp time all throughout the policy, which I've already made a note of to do.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I gotta put it in a minute.
I know we had a long discussion on that. I think it was very productive, but Mr. Gomez, I absolutely agree with you.
Thank you.
I don't get it.
Just very quickly, in another city, I had a similar argument over the 6-hour workday. When I arrived, there was a 6-hour workday.
How many days a week?
No, 5 days a week. It was well known that it was a 6-hour workday.
Oh, goodness.
But everybody was paid for 7.5, but it was a 6-hour workday.
Where is this? Can I go?
It changed quickly.
Hopefully it did.
But it's things that, as Mr. Eschenfelder said, a little bit of the compensation game that you want to manage appropriately. And again, we're still providing an array of benefits and et cetera, and all the good stuff that we do for all of our employees.
Fine with that.
Guys, it's 5:45. How long are you guys willing to go? Are we okay to 6:30? Are you okay? Are you okay to 6:30? Mr. Eschenfelder, are you okay to 6:30?
And I'm good with that, yes.
Mr. Eschenfelder? We might have scared him off. I don't know.
Could we take
I'm
like a
fine.
5-minute
You-
break?
Can we take a 5-minute break?
Yeah.
Yes, let's do that, please. Claire, are you okay to 6:30? Okay. Are we ready?
Yes.
Mr. Eschenfelder?
Mr. Chair, I'm here.
Okay. So we're on page 4-6, pay hours, work week. The 2 items here, on-call status and standby status. These 2 will actually bleed over into page 4-7, so I'd like to accomplish both of those. And I have an honest question. Why do we have 2 separate categories? Why is there an on-call status and a standby? Is standby in case like there's a weather emergency and you have to keep people ready? Is that what that
I
would
think
be?
I'm not sure what Rob, but I'm only familiar with kind of standby pay. I think he's defining them as 2 separate
Does the city ever use on-call
So
status?
we do have standby, for example, in Public Works, and somebody is assigned to be on standby. And we actually were compensating them, I believe, with comp time. That's not how it should have been. We started paying for somebody to be on standby, so they have a cell phone and should, there's a collision on Gulf Boulevard and we need to put barricades or something was damaged, then they call the standby employee who then goes out and does whatever they need to do. So the standby pay is just by being, available to be called. If they're called back in, then that is a different pay status, which could result in overtime or not, but it's a different rate of pay.
Okay. So,
So I'm not sure why there's on-call and standby. I'm sure Rob could clarify.
Or so on call, in the law, really the distinction is, are you able to use the time effectively for personal purposes? That's kind of the FLSA standard. On call is you must be ready to go when we call you. You cannot, go to Disney World or whatever. You've got to really be almost like ready to roll out of bed and head in. In FLSA world, if someone is on call, then that's compensable time, and you have to pay them. And so that's basically how I've written it. Standby is more, we've got this group of IT technicians, and each day a week or each night a week, one of you by rotation or whatever is going to have it used to be a pager, but respond to text or whatever. And so, but it doesn't happen that frequently, right? It's just, we want to know that on Thursday nights, if something goes down with the server, Phil is the guy who is on standby. And so if we call Phil in on standby, then here is the breakdown of how Phil's going to be compensated. That's the distinction between the two. We don't have to say anything about it. If we don't say anything about it, then we really need to understand what the city actually does, because if they are doing on-call and or standby, we really need to have rules surrounding it. If we don't like these rules, then we can come up with something else as to standby. But if they're on call, meaning they can't effectively use their time for any other purpose except for waiting to be called in, then they have to be compensated. Does any of that not make sense?
makes sense. When I looked at other cities for what their on-call compensation is, the cities, not looking at other professions, but the cities, there's a minimum amount of pay they provide those employees, all right? And I don't know if it's 4 hours or if it's 6 hours, it depends upon the city.
2 hours.
There's 2 hours. Okay. Can we, if this is here, can we make sure that there's something that says that we're going to make it realistic with respect to what the market is? That doesn't mean we're going to say you're going to get paid $100 for being on call, but it
Right,
just-
so
that
we
needs to be-
currently use on-call. We do not use standby.
Use
So
on-call.
on-call, as Mr. Eschenfelder stated, for somebody ready should an emergency arise, essentially, and they meet the criteria that he listed, they have to be ready to respond on a moment's notice. Again, we were primarily compensating that with comp time.
Okay.
And then I believe we started paying, I think, $30 a day. I don't know, I don't remember the exact amount, something like that, for just being on call. If you were called in, it's a minimum of 2 hours pay. And again, you're paid either your regular wage or your wage, or time and a half. I'd have to
Depending
check
upon where they're
exactly.
at, yeah.
Right, and so that's what we are currently doing. So I don't believe we have had anything called standby, other than probably when there's an emergency. In an emergency, a hurricane is approaching or a storm. But again, we have been using on-call. And so I'm not opposed to the language
Okay.
in what's being proposed. I think the language is fine.
Okay.
But it can be clarified that we can certainly pay a market rate. And we would look, because I think I looked at what other cities were paying just to be on call, and it was a per day or overnight type of pay. But if you were actually called in, it's a different rate of pay with a 2-hour minimum.
With the RFP that's put out for the
They can take a
classification
look at
and
that,
compensation, can they take a look
Yep.
at that and give us feedback? Because whatever it is, I'd like to make sure we're comparable to other cities, all right? I mean, I know what I paid my employees when I worked in healthcare, and I don't think we're gonna do that here. But it's, so, you know,
And even as the manager just described it sounds like the city has been using a hybridized system
Yeah.
because it is not on call to say we may call you in, maybe we won't. It's on call status is that, well, sub B describes it. The employee is on premises or so close that he or she cannot use the time effectively for personal purposes.
That's what we're
Under
doing.
the FLSA rules, if that's what we're telling our employees we need, that is just compensable time. We have to pay them as though they were here working. Standby is, we need to be able to reach out and grab you, but go ahead and go to Chili's and have a beer and all that kind of stuff. But you just also need to know that Thursday nights, you might be the one, if the sewer line breaks or whatever, your crew is going to get called or whatnot.
Every city I've worked in has only called it on-call, a designated employee or employees, and they must be reachable. Yeah, you can't go to the local bar. You must be either on the physical, rarely was anybody ever on the physical premises of their workplace, but they were within X amount of time to respond. And again, it was a flat rate that they were compensated for being available to come back into work.
is there a minimum callback time if they get called in?
It was a minimum of 2 hours.
About 2 hours? Is that in here? I don't think it is.
I don't,
So is
Well,
there,
that's because on call is just compensable. If you're told to be on call, then you're just paid, even if you're at home, like you would be here. Standby is where there usually is a graduated scale, and I just plugged in.
I'm
know,
thinking
that-
what you're thinking.
I've
I'm
been in
thinking
4
what you're-
cities where they've been
Yeah.
doing it incorrectly.
Yeah.
This is the 4th city, but
I would-
either way, however you would like to word it. But what I've said is what we do. We assign one employee, they're at home, and they know that they can be called in. If there's a call, they are to report back here
It can
to
be-
the city.
Is there called in between 5 PM and 8 AM?
It could be after between 5 PM and when they report to work the next morning,
The next morning, okay. And there's a minimum payout of 2 hours and.
if they're called back in.
And then for being on call.
There's a flat
certain
rate.
amount of hours they get paid.
It's just
whatever
a
that is,
flat
right?
rate.
Flat rate, but that flat rate is not overtime hours.
Correct.
That is not.
It's called on-call pay or it could, I think here it's on-call.
Yeah.
Other cities have been at standby pay or on,
But if they get called in, those hours count towards the 40 hours per week or 80 hours for
Correct,
every 2
yes.
weeks, right?
yes.
but I don't hear anything different in what you two are saying necessarily. Is there anything in what he just described that isn't on call? Attorney Eschenfelder?
It sounds like what he's describing is standby.
I hear on call though. He's saying they have to be, they have to be
mix.
ready for work.
Yeah, they can't
So
go to the bar, they
They can't.
they
so
can't be out at, they really can't be anywhere but at home.
So why are you hearing that it's standby?
I think because we're not compensating them
Oh,
hour for
let's-
hour,
So is that why?
or that may be a reason why.
There is compensation for
But
being
not hour for
available.
hour.
There's compensation for being available, which is the way I've known it in industry in the past, is you
Yeah,
don't give them their
$50,
hourly
30,
rate
50.
because they're not working.
Right,
but you
they're
do
just-
give them money to be available.
I think the term I think in Rob's is they're just standing by.
Sure.
But they're available to come in and I guess you can, he's stating there's a statutory difference between the two.
So is that true, Attorney Eschenfelder? Is that your concern is the compensation structure? Or the difference between what you're hearing? Because I hear like he's saying they have to meet 4D, that they must be ready to go. So like logistically, they're on call. And so that I understand, you're saying that what is different is the pay structure?
When you see
It
4C,
Let
has
him
to,
answer, please, I'm
it
sorry.
has to do with how much flexibility that employee has. There is a code of regulation. It's 45 CFR section 551431, time spent on standby duty or in an on-call status. The FLSA treats these two in two different ways. And it all centers on how much freedom the employee has to go about his or her personal business. And if they have general freedom to go about his or her personal business, but they just know, for instance, that if a water main should break on Thursday nights or Saturday nights or Monday nights, my crew is going to get called in. That's standby. And so since they've got freedom to do what they want to do and go to Dillard's and go to Applebee's or whatever, then they only get paid if they're actually asked to come in on standby status. On call is much more, we want you, it's almost like firefighter, we want you to be able to roll out of bed
Right.
and come. And you can't go to Applebee's and you can't go to Dillard's. That needs to be compensated as though you were working.
So you do not compensate people on call unless they come in?
for 4C, it's
We
there.
we were not until I arrived here.
Okay.
We are now paying
To be on call?
to be on call.
Okay, now with that attorney, is that, do you mean he's?
But we're not paying hour for hour.
Okay,
We are paying a flat rate, which I believe it's either $30 or $50.
It's a premium pay differential, which is 4C. On-call hours for non-exempt
what, so
employees are
did he
eligible for premium
understand
pay
that, did you
differentials.
understand they are being paid to be on call? Does that change anything?
I think we're actually communicating the same thing. It's just the way you and I are talking about it, Rob, is different than the way Eschenfelder is used to hearing it. Because I can tell you in every profession I've ever had, on-call means that you receive a differential. Whatever, it's a percentage of hourly pay or if it's a flat rate, it's either one. But you're available, you can go out to eat with your family, it doesn't matter, you can't drink, but you must be available to show up within a reasonable expected period of time. If you're called in, you get a flat amount of hours, whether you come in for 30 minutes or you're here for 2 hours, you get paid for 2 hours minimum, all right? Whatever the case is there. And then if you go beyond 2 hours, you get that. It counts towards your 40-hour work week. It counts towards your time and a half as well. So it's that, every job I've ever had where I've had employees or myself, whenever I would take on call myself when I was the employee, it was paid that way. And that's been done for me over almost 40 years. So I'm like, I think we're not communicating something properly because I doubt seriously the organizations I work for were violating federal law.
Well,
I
then
don't
let's
think
let
that's
the
happening.
attorney- So with that clarification that there is a premium being paid for these people, quote unquote, on call, I'd like to get to the root of this if we can. Attorney Eichenfelder, is that still not meeting the criteria that you're setting forth?
I think probably the best thing here is to let me get with the manager.
Yes, sir. I
And
agree.
figure out exactly what the city's doing and talk through what the regs say, and then come back to you next time with what we are able to work out.
Good.
So even though we're going to move beyond this, we're going to review this item 4 and 5 the next time we come back.
Yeah, just put a pin in it, so to speak.
Perfect.
And I don't know if it's next time, because next time is Monday, so I don't know what the manager's schedule is. He's a busy fella.
We can at least, we
But
can at least
we
see
can
where
talk,
you're at
yeah.
and address it the
Yeah.
next time if it's not then.
Yeah, I don't think it's
Yeah.
early.
And just so everyone's aware, currently what we are doing is we rotate employees on an on-call status as a form condition. Employees will carry a device and notified and respond to emergency. And it says employees that are on call will receive 6 hours of compensatory time. And
Both of
if-
you, yeah, review and see how it aligns or doesn't align. I think that's a great course of action.
And if it says if an employee's called back, the employee receives 2 hours minimum pay at time and 1/2 hours after the first 40 hours in the work week.
Excellent.
It's pretty brief what we have now, which is, again, the other 3 cities I've worked in, this is exactly how it was handled, other than in one, they did provide comp hours, and the others, you received, it was either $30 it was per night because you were on call overnight, so it was either $30 or $50.
When you're talking about your comp, you mean it's like compensable time. They're gonna get paid for it, right?
No, well, they're getting comp hours, comp
hours,
time.
okay.
Yeah, they were not getting paid for it.
Okay, I get it, okay.
Again, the reason to do away with comp time, or a reason.
I worked for a city that had standby time before.
Yeah.
Like if you're gonna have a hurricane, you know, everybody's on standby just in case they had to be called in, but it's not like an on-call. And our police department had a cooperative agreement that where if there was or a fire department, if there was a major fire somewhere, they were always on standby just in case they had to go aid that other city or something.
Okay.
So, you know, that it's often characterized as, is the employee waiting to be engaged, or are they engaged to wait? And the 29 CFR 785.17 says an employee who is required to remain on call on the employee's premises or so close thereto that he cannot use the time effectively for his own purposes is working while on call. And if they are working,
Even though they're
they are
not.
required to be paid. So that's why I drafted it the way I did. I don't know about the other jurisdictions. I'm just, you know, presenting what I'm presenting, but the manager and I will confer. We'll figure out what the city actually does and actually needs and come back to you with what we recommend.
That sounds
let's
like,
try to
that sounds
get
like the
through
right
next-
solution, yeah. That
That's
does
it.
sound like the right solution. Are we ready to go on to, so we're gonna wrap up in 16 minutes.
Do we want to do one last
You
section?
guys wanna go
or-
through this
D?
part D?
Can we get?
Are we okay to do that?
I think so. Do we have other orders of business that we need to attend to?
Not that I'm aware of. We still have everything on the list for what we're coming back to. We talked about doing the classification and compensation study. Everything else is on the waiting list, so are you two okay with moving forward, trying to get D done, and then we'll stop at the end of
We can
D?
stop at,
Is that okay?
yeah, sounds good to me.
All right, and then on the
Everybody
20th,
else?
we pick it up from there, and we all plan to be here as late as we need to be that day. I don't know if we'll finish it, but we need to try and get through as much as possible.
Yes.
Mr.
And-
Eschenfelder, how late can you work on the 20th?
I've already got it booked to midnight. I'll be there in person. So,
I do have to
I'm
say,
expecting that filet dinner.
you're
Listen,
bringing that in.
Before you guys, move on, because you mentioned the RFP, it would be helpful, I think, to the manager. As you all know, when you do a solicitation, the scope of service is all important. We need to tell the vending community what we're looking for. So if between now and the 20th, if any of the three of you want to, tell the manager in any level of detail the scope of service that you feel should be in the RFP, that's helpful to him. Because I just don't want it to be where he thinks he understands what you're looking for, and then he puts it on the street, and then you all say, well, that's not what we were looking for. So just a recommendation.
I'll definitely have something that I'll send to you. You may even have more than I'm thinking, Mr. Gomez. All right? Number one is ordinance 20, I'm looking at B, RFP classification, compensation, and plan study. Is that what you're talking about? B, yes. To include an analysis of the current staff positions and their responsibilities, increased efficiency and cross-training of personnel to develop teamwork within the departments and within the organization as a whole, a new classification compensation plan with updated position descriptions, policies, procedures, and future classification action, and related management supervisory training. Classification based on duties, authority, that's all there, yep.
I'm sorry, which document?
B and C on this list.
The agenda.
Yeah, I'm looking at the agenda,
They had got that from a recent RFP.
but I mean, it's in the
Item
current
8.
agenda?
Yep, item 8B.
Oh, 8B, okay.
Sorry about that.
Oh, okay. There's a document for that, with that?
There's a RFP from another city that you.
In the
looked
agenda
at, and
packet?
it's not that
There is an
old.
RFP in there from another city, because I actually pulled that up. I remember, I think we both talked about that at one point.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
could send that to, I'll send that to
Yeah.
Robin and, or I could send it
Not
out to
able
all
to.
y'all.
It might be
think
a
it's in
good
the
idea
packet,
for the
Robin.
both of you
Not
to
in
look
the
at that
Not in the
RFP as
packet,
well.
but there was an RFP that went with that
Should be in that
number one.
document.
Okay, yeah, if you could email, well,
And it was a recent one from a city, I think it was.
But yes,
If
if
it's
you
still
would.
ongoing, let's see if we can piggyback it.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
which city does anybody remember? Okay. Because I think Oldsmar recently did one also, but that's completed, I think,
I didn't even
from
know.
last year, yeah.
I know I didn't look at Oldsmar's RFP.
Okay.
So that's.
Thank you, yeah, we'll do that.
Okay. Are we ready to move on to D?
Yes.
Here we go. Work time records and emergency conditions. Does anybody have any questions on items 1 through 6? And 6 does go into the next page, 4-9. Oh, my computer died.
Oh, yeah, it's charging.
On page 4-9, second paragraph down, and this may not be necessary, but it's something I'm wondering. It starts out employees who are not compensated. As you go down through this, so it's the last sentence, which is really the second. Employees may not use FMLA sick leave for such periods unless they demonstrate through medical documentation to their department director's satisfaction. Does that need to include human resources there, or just, because shouldn't HR be involved in saying this does meet conditions for FMLA, or is it just the department director?
So how I have this policy written and set up is that department heads approve time off requests, including FMLA time off requests. That the FMLA portion, which we haven't gotten to yet, has the department head coordinating with HR to ensure when FMLA should be approved or not.
So that's a
And
separate
so once
section.
FMLA is approved, then, the first form, where they certify it, but once that's been approved by the city, it's really up to the director to have that person be off on any given day.
Okay, good. It sounds like it's handled in a different area, so I'm going to leave that be.
I have one minor, I think there's a typo on D5, so 4, 8. I think that first sentence, the comma and if should be removed, if I'm reading that correctly. Maybe not. It seems like there's something grammatical in there. When
Where
the
are you
Board of-
looking?
Number 5, emergency conditions. When the Board of Commissioners formally declares a state of emergency, city employees who hold positions designated to perform essential services during the actual emergency declaration period shall, and then this is where I see the issue. Yeah, I would take out the if. Yeah, shall report to work when required. Yep, agreed.
Comma and the if, correct.
Comma and if.
Yep.
Okay, I got it.
Thank you.
I think I was messing around and it used to say shall, comma, if required, comma, report to work, and then I moved it and didn't take away the if.
Dr. Tilka, do you have any comments?
The only other comment I have, which I think it's likely as good as it gets, but reading that failure to report for duty, in the middle or thereabouts, it says claiming a physical inability to report when required are not, employees claiming a physical inability to report when required are not permitted to cite a mere fear of traveling during the emergency condition or a general concern for not staying with the family. Is there any other protection we can have beyond that? Like they have to have some kind of documentation? I'm again, assuming this is as good as it gets, but,
There's just so many permutations, but physical inability, for instance, management will say, okay, the road that you live on completely washed out and you have no physical way
sure.
to travel to report to duty. That's a clear example of that. What this is more trying to get to is we get those things. I mean, if you're truly snowed in, so to speak, then you're snowed in. But what it's trying to avoid is employees who say, I'm just afraid to drive down that road because it may cave in or something. I mean, I'm happy to reword it if you have suggested revisions.
It seems kind of, honestly, it seems clear, and the only thought that comes to mind is there anything there, like, is there something where they would, we can differentiate there? There's kind of a gray area, and it may just, again, be what it is, but if there's something where they have to document the inability or something like that, I'm not sure. It may not actually be able to be
How
improved.
would, I mean, there's just some things you aren't going to be able to document.
Yeah.
And management, needs to be able to say, I've heard you, I believe you, I have no reason to disbelieve you. And so if you say document, now we get into that thing of, are you going to apply that equally all the time?
Okay.
And the first time you don't, now someone's going to say, well, you didn't make him document it, and yet you let him stay home. And now you're telling me I can't stay home unless I document it.
Seems reasonable. I'm happy with as it's written. Good.
Good.
That's all I have.
Any other questions, guys? Mr. Gomez, this is one of those things I wrote in my notes and I just noticed it, but on the last meeting on the 11th, on October the 11th, we were talking about offer letters, and you offered to send us an example offer letter. And I haven't received it, but I'll send you an email separately just to reiterate that we need to look at that at
I
some point.
must have missed that. My apologies.
Okay,
We'll get
it's all
you.
right. All right. I'll send an email to, should I send it to you or should I send it to Mr. Gomez?
Send it to
you?
both.
Okay, all right. I'll do that just as a reminder, and then it's not anything we have to tackle today. So it's,
Thank you.
all right. Any other concerns?
None.
All right. So do I just say we adjourn the meeting? How do I go about it?
Yep.
All right.
If you want to.
Without objection, we're adjourned.
Without what?
Without objection, we're adjourned.
Without objection, we're adjourned at 6:27 PM.